Hello, hello, and we are here. I'm sorry if I'm a bit groggy today. My kids have been sick for days, and they weren't sleeping very well last night. However, um, Jesse, we'll get to your super chat in a little bit. But let's talk. Um, it's weird how my first weird how the programming here, like, for some reason it sorts like the the comments at first, and then it's very odd. It's probably something that'll fix with the next update. It's probably because it didn't do this before. Um, but on Duncan Egg, which, look, I'm really, first of all, like, I'm really happy that Duncan Egg is greenlit. Like, I think it's the best. You've heard me talk about this. I think it's some of the best, if not the best, stuff that George has ever written. Um, it's something that uh, is not like the other material. Like, it can't actually rely on CGI. It can't actually um, rely on, like, too much sex and violence. There is violence, especially in the Hedge Knight, but, like, um, it's like, it can't. It's mainly character pieces. Like, this is really in-depth character pieces, with some really interesting um, dialogue and things like that. And I think it's kind of like, I kind of compare it to Andor in the sense that, like, I was not expecting something like this to ever be greenlit, because from what we hear, George R. Martin just kind of goes in there and he's like, well, there's this Dance of the Dragons thing. It's got 17 dragons, and dragons are cool, and the reason Game of Thrones, like, people didn't like the end is there were only three dragons, and really, if you get 17 dragons, like, and it's I don't know if that's true or not. I don't, like, maybe if I'm so in my Ice and Fire bubbles that, like, I don't know what randos really think very much about the CGI dragons. I've talked to enough randos who like really like Jon Snow and really like those stories of the White Walkers, and thought that was very intriguing. But I never met anybody that was like, oh yeah, I really like CGI dragons. But there was a funny comment that said, like, it's got puppet shows. It's got puppet shows, and therefore it's, like, ready to go. And I was like, that's true. That's true. How many puppet shows? How many puppet shows? Well, fuck, House of the Dragon at a puppet show. No. Wait. Was that live action? No, it was just live action, right? There was no puppet show. Is See, I'm conflating, like, book and show here when they have, like, puppet shows. But, like, I know that we hear about a puppet show in A Clash of Kings, and then we hear about Danny's vision of, like, a Mummer's dragon and stuff like that. But yeah, it's good to get more puppets in there. That's what we really need, puppets. Um, but Henry Cavill is Dunk, obviously. I think um I think Henry Cavill might be too handsome and too confident. Like, don't we need somebody that's, like, insecure, young and insecure, for Dunk? I don't mean like Jason Segel specifically, but, like, wouldn't you imagine a character like Jason Segel, the guy from, like, How I Met Your Mother, like, big and a bit dopey, and like, a bit insecure. Like, that's kind of how I see Dunk. I mean, I'm sure they'll screw it up and they like cast someone like Henry Cavill. But really quickly before it gets forgotten, um, Jesse asked about this weird imagery from Catelyn 7 to Clash of Kings. Old men weak or foolish, young men overeager, stand up to them alone, and the manhood leaks right out of them is obvious. Vardis sword snaps too. Um, this refers to, in Catelyn 7. That's, I think they're leading up to the battle between Brune and Vardis Egan, and um, everybody's kind of like, oh, like, Brune is not Brune, Braun. Braun is gonna lose because he's, like, a sellsword, and so they're like, oh, his, you know, if you stand him up, if you stand a sellsword up alone, his manhood leaks right out of him, and he's gonna flee. And admittedly, like there does seem to be a half baked like dick reference in that, like because we talk about like when people talk about like it sounds like premature ejaculation, right? Because they're talking about manhood, right? His manhood, it's a pun of like his courage, but his dick, right? And so his manhood leaks right out of him. Like somehow he's gonna have some like premature ejaculation and like be and like become cowardly at that point. It's a weird analogy because how does that really like? Because with sex and they think of like it being somebody like being inexperienced and just being overeager and it like shooting out, right? But then again, with old men, it's like, don't they also talk about like there not being much force and everything kind of leaking out? Like it's kind of half baked. I don't know if George like fully made a thought there because in how a sellsword reacts, they're saying he's being cowardly, that he's gonna like run, which is very different from like premature ejaculation, which is like about being overly eager. So George is definitely trying to make some sort of dick comment, but I don't know if the analogy actually lands. I'm gonna say that George failed on this quote. Um, like his manhood leaking out of him, like courage leaking out of someone. I don't see how that relates to like thinking about the analogy one to one of like, you know, someone having premature ejaculation and sex versus like a sellsword becoming cowardly and fleeing. So I mean that's why I think like George just kind of fucked up. He was like trying to shove in a dick reference and he like failed on that one. He's not gonna George is not gonna hit every single one. He doesn't always hit it out of the park. um Aegon had a puppet show. Where I'm trying to think where was the Aegon there was a puppet show at a Game of Thrones. I'm trying to think, or because I remember in the Clash of Kings them talking about the puppet show, and he kind of says there was puppets and against Joffrey, and a dragon comes out at the end, and then Tyrion's like, oh, it was a big joke. But I'm trying to remember the puppets in Game of Thrones. Maybe we need an entire puppet video where we talk about the puppets of Ice and Fire. Um, the I'm kind of tired of dragons. I want gritty medieval politics. I think it kind of gets to be like zombies. You know how everybody like loved zombies and then they got really sick of them. I think it's the same thing. You just kind of get sick of like one element. Like there's how many different facets can you look at a flying beast that burns fire? Um, so I think it's this Dunkin' Egg may be like much like Andor. You strip away the Jedi's and you strip away the Force, and you're left with like gritty politics. At least I mean, the Hedge Knight Dunk is kind of like watching everything. Kind of a lot of events happen to him, and then there's more politics in the Sworn Sword and the Mystery Knight. I love it. I love him. Any idea who Lothor Brune could be? Um, I think he is just a Brune, but there is this question where he like doesn't get along with the branches with perhaps one of the branches. Um, the and like why does he go after Fossways and become the apple eater and things like this? Is there anything to this, or is that just kind of a bunch of random stuff? Like we can kind of figure out that in my opinion, when you look at the history, that Nimble Dick, like sister, was probably had sex with one of the lords and then was expelled and then had to become a one of the lord's sons and then got expelled and then had to work as a sex worker. and then Nimble Dick then had no place to go because they just kind of kicked him out because his sister had sex. But I don't know if we ever get into like who Lothor Brune was and like what, because he says something like they're no cousins of mine or something at some point, and we're trying to figure out like what exactly happened. But I just don't think that there's perhaps. He said the Brunes of Brown Hollow. He went to them to form a family bond, but they said there were no kin of theirs. That's all there is. So he's like just a poor cousin who like, and we've established that the Bruins of Brown Hollow are a bunch of dicks. So it might just be that he's just like a guy who was also like not unless he was involved. I mean, maybe he went there and observed like the Nimble Dick situation and like was sickened by it and was like, yeah, I'm out of here. You guys are dicks, you know. Because it could have been more severe, where like Nimble Dick's sister didn't just have extramarital sex, but like was actually raped, you know, and then is blamed for it. So maybe the Brune was, you know, just disgusted by his kin and their behavior with regards to Nimble Dick. There's a lot of speculation. We got to get Macaulay Culkin to play Egg. I mean, Macaulay Culkin is still pretty small. I love Macaulay Culkin. He's so funny. The fact that he like hangs out with Red Letter Media every once in a while. Everyone loves a saucy puppet show. I do love puppets. I think we all love puppets, but puppets did not save being John Malkovich from being a horrible movie, which is too bad. I mean, they made some good puppet jokes, but man. Henry Cavill is Tansel Too Tall. Who would we get for Tansel Too Tall? Because would they get that girl from the Tall Girl show? Do you remember the Tall Girl? There was that Tall Girl show on Netflix. Ava Michelle. Ava Michelle. I don't know how tall she is. 187 centimeters. So that's 6'3". No, 6'2". 6'2". She's tall. Tansel Too Tall. If only George used 5 years on each Song of Ice and Fire book, we would have 25 other short stories from Westeros. Yeah, it's. I mean, obviously, like, you know, this all doesn't bode well for Winds of Winter. Isn't Dunk 19? Yeah, Dunk's around 19, if not younger. He's really young. And so somebody like Henry Cavill would be like completely wrong. But, you know, obviously, like, how old was Kit Harington when they cast him as Jon Snow? When Kit Harington's like 36 now, so when they cast him as Jon Snow, he was born in 86 and did Game of Thrones season 1 was 2011, so he was about 25 when they cast him. Well, that's true. Dunk doesn't actually know how old he is. That's true. He guesses. Yeah. How much did TLOU success do you think had influence on this decision? I hope they respect Dunk's age and the more brotherly relationship he has with Egg. Yeah, I hope. I think, to be honest, I think that what happened was Ryan Condal. If I were to really guess, that it was because George goes in there and he's going to be an advocate for everything. And I think George, like I say, like in every interview, he tries to push, oh, this has dragons. This is dragons. Like as if like the dragons are the beginning and the end of a show. And I think Ryan Condal probably also read the material, loved the material, and had an in, and was like, look, these are really good stories, and people trusted him. I think perhaps he was like a better pitch man than George. I mean, it might also just be that like it's just logical conclusion that it's going to be Dunk and Egg because there's just not that much written material left. Like, what else do? You can do Aegon's Conquest, like, and the Reign of Jaehaerys, but like that's it. Like we're down to we're scraping the bottom of the barrel with George's writing. I mean, you can go to the Thousand Worlds. um uh what's more disappointing, Westworld's ending or Battlestar Galactica's bullshit? So I would say that Battlestar Galactica was much more disappointing than Westworld. Like, at least with Westworld, I can be like, well, we never got to see the ending. We can kind of imagine an ending that was in there. Battlestar Galactica, like, its fall happened so quickly and so fast, and and they bumbled it. There wasn't even a preparation. Like, there wasn't even the same preparation that I had in my mind for like Game of Thrones season 8. I think other people, that's how they felt about Game of Thrones season 8. They were loving it all the way through season 7, and then it all fell apart. While like I was hating on the show since season 4, and like by the time it got to season 8, I was like, yeah, what'd you guys expect? Battlestar Galactica fell apart really fast, and you kept there was so much cope. Everybody's just like, no, it's going to come together, it's going to come together, and it's going to be great. It's going to come together, and it's going to be great. Oh my god, they've the final 5, like, everything. And you got your hopes up that something would happen, and it was only when they like were wasting all this time on the coup, and you're like, why? We don't have very much time left, guys. Like, what are you guys doing? that it's sort of like people were like, I don't think they can pull this off. They can't pull this landing, and so they couldn't really. They didn't pull the landing. Westworld as well. Like, things were crazy in season 2. So, if you rearrange the words in Catelyn Tully, it spells C word lately. Does Lysa Tuttle have a sister George R. Martin hates? No, it's nothing like that. I think George R. Martin's certainly did not plan for Kat to be hated as much as the fandom hates her. I love Kat, and I think that the hate of Catelyn is completely just sexist and horrible double standards. Like, why is Jaime Lannister loved and yet like Catelyn is hated? Like, Jaime Lannister can sleep with his sister and throw a little boy out a window, and he's loved and he can have a redemption arc. But Catelyn, oh geez, like, she kidnaps Tyrion and she's like the worst person in the world forever. Did Doran send Quentyn east before or after Oberyn's death? Quentyn was sent east before. He was sent east before Oberyn's death. In fact, there was an entire thing about like Quentyn choosing to be knighted by the Blood Royal rather than Oberyn right before he left, because he was knighted right away. And so when Quentyn still thinks Oberyn's alive and still thinks Tywin's alive, or unless he heard something in Volantis, but he never thinks about it in his internal dialogue. And so certainly, we kind of get a timeline because we know that Quentyn is gone by the time of the Queenmaker and the Soiled Knight chapter, and they are like, that's pretty close in time, like a few days. And that's when they're like, well, I mean, I guess like the death is at the beginning of the Captain of the Guard chapter, right? Oberyn's death like reaches Dorne, and then Tywin's death like hits the news of that hits in the Queenmaker chapter. So Quentyn's gone by then. Yeah, so definitely. Being John Malkovich was a terrible movie. What a hot take. That's yeah, I hate that movie. I hate it so much. I hate the movie. It's there are no likable characters in that entire movie, and everybody sits around like you're talking about the subject of like murderous thievery, like taking people's like lives and souls and like pushing them to the back of their mind for like their life, and like putting them in essentially hell for their entire life, and everybody's just like doesn't care, nobody cares, like that's never brought up as a topic. um by comparison, like the idea of like taking over people's bodies is brought up in the drawing of the three in the Stephen King book, the second of the Dark Tower, and the first thing Roland thinks about is about how it is the most immoral thing one could possibly do and how horrible it would be to like take somebody's body like that. It's the first thing he thinks about, as one would, and yet nobody in that movie thinks about it or talks about it. It's so unrealistic, and like, I mean, yes, it's a story about somebody like going into a room and a hallway and then going into somebody's body and then like ending up on the New Jersey Turnpike. I get that, but like, why would I like any of these characters? I didn't care if like all of the characters could die, and I would not care because they were all horrible human beings. Like what? Like that's the fundamental fault to that movie. That's why no one talks about it anymore. Like when it first came out, everyone's like, "What an original concept," and then it disappeared because it's a shitty movie. It's a really shitty movie. Um, there's that scene in Game of Thrones where Stannis had all of those unborn babies in tubes. Season 3, was that ever reflected in the books? What's your take? Uh it was no, they weren't unborn babies. I think they were Selyse's stillbirths and like miscarriages. They were like stillbirths and miscarriages that she was like saving. They were all born. Um uh that there's nothing like that in the book. Um it's a very weird. I mean, Selyse like miscarries and stuff, but like and like can't get pregnant very much, but um yeah, no, this was just like a weird shock thing. This is the scene. She creates these like vats. By the way, look at this one in the middle. Like that's the biggest. Look how big that thing is. It's enormous. That's like like what like what human being would do that? That's just yeah. That was a weird. That was a weird thing. No, that's there's nothing like that. There's absolutely nothing like that in the books. Because like because I don't even know. I don't know if she does Selyse ever actually even get to the point where she's still births, or is they all miscarriages? Um, because then just like the size and everything wouldn't be there. They have a daughter. They only have a daughter. Does she even have any miscarriages? I don't even think if in the book she has miscarriages. I think I think the whole joke. So there is kind of a joke in and they allude to this in House of the Dragon. Like Stannis like goes home to have sex with Selyse like a couple times a year to do his like um husbandly duty, and he's just like disappointed because like she never gets pregnant. It's like, well, you're only having sex with her like 2 times a year, like come on. And so she only produces one kid for him, and he's just like, wow, what a barren worthless woman, you know. And you're like, oh god. And so the reason she doesn't have kids and Stannis doesn't have many kids is because he's not having sex with Selyse. Like it's as simple as that. um but I guess they changed things up a bit in this show by having her like have stillbirths and miscarriages and stuff. That's weird. I mean, it's weird. It's very very weird. And they like. I think it's a bit much. I mean, I guess they were trying to make Selyse seem crazy, but I don't know. Like, I, Selyse like never comes off as very good in any of her scenes in the book either. But I still have sympathy for poor Selyse. I mean, yeah, it's been through a lot. Um, man. Um, Whatever happened to the power of House Velaryon? They were once dominant house, but the main series, but they seem less important. Loss of dragons, weak lords, leaderships, or do they support the Blackfires? That's a really good question. I've looked into for a long time. Um, a lot of research on trying to connect like which houses supported whom in the dance and trying to like see which ones supported whom in the Blackfire Rebellion. And there's not much correlation. There's not much correlation, which is a funny thing because again, even when you go with like the maesters are trying to get rid of dragons kind of like idea, which like shouldn't certain houses like be in on the maester conspiracy or whatever? And the answer is no. Like the high towers are like super pro green, and then they are kind of neutral or supporting both camps in the Blackfire rebellions. Um, so the Velaryons, we have no idea who they supported in the Blackfire rebellions. None. It's not mentioned at all. It's not mentioned what happens to their wealth. We essentially go from the end of the dance and Corley's ruling to like Stannis having them, and we know nothing of like what they were doing in the meantime. Um, and maybe that's by design. Maybe they were huge Blackfire supporters, and that's why their power is gone. But definitely, House Velaryon had an enormous plummet in power, enormous, considering that they were richer than the High Towers, on par with the High Towers, having this enormous fleet, and so that amount of wealth shouldn't have disappeared. Plus, they're like they still do trade. What would have changed, in that period of time? Um, so it's I one can logically say, well, something had to have sapped their wealth. Maybe they were on the wrong side of the Blackfire Rebellion, and then they were their wealth and was taken. But we don't hear about their lands being taken, So uh, it's certainly a big mystery, and it's not like the Velaryons were like, um, I mean, I guess a lot of them died when they tried to usurp Luke, but there's still a bunch of them around. There's still, but the house isn't um, wiped out or anything like that. So the answer is just like it's a huge mystery and it's a huge hole. Like what other houses do we have that were super powerful that suddenly disappear without explanation? The Velaryons are the only ones I can think of, where there's like not a good, where they're like enormous at a certain time and then just vanish. So uh why do people hate Cat? Sexism. It is the only reason people hate Cat. Or being mean to Jon Snow one time. It should have been you. That's about it. You know. Um, do you think George R. R. Martin's like whole point of the Dance of the Dragons was that war is pointless because Rhaenyra's son ended up on the throne anyway? Um, I mean, I think I think the point of the Dance of the Dragons is that we're focused on who is sitting on the throne and not realizing that the result is the dragons get killed. Like the important thing, it doesn't matter who actually like sits on the throne. The important thing is like the dragons were killed, right? And so it's really that we're being distracted. We're getting into this big distraction of like, oh my gosh, is it gonna be Rhaenyra? Is it gonna be Aegon? Oh, in the end, it's the Aegon the Third gets to sit on the throne, um, and meanwhile the dragons had all killed each other, and so I think that's the point, is that we're it's a nice distraction, where we, the maesters get to say, what caused this war? Well, it was the bickering between the princess and the queen. There was a rivalry, and they just hated each other. There were too many Targaryens, and they were disagreeing over the Council of 101. Oh, honest mistake. Oh, and dragons disappeared? Like, like imagine like something like similar. Like, okay. Let's talk about like the extinction of the mammoth, right? Imagine like someone's like, "Huh, what happened to the mammoths?" Well, there was a fight for power in Mongolia, and like two different like Mongol like um kings or tribal leaders were like fighting with each other, and there was a long succession crisis. And you're like, and then at the end, mammoths were dead. Like, whoa, what? What? Like, it's kind of important. Like, and these are dragons. They're much more important than mammoths. Um, so I think the point is that you get to distracted. Um, oh, if you don't agree with Modest Maltese's old take on Mance Rayder theory, what do you think the similarities between the two characters mean? Oh, is that the gentleman who was like pushing the Mance Rayder theory? I forget. I didn't know his name. It does ring a bell. Um, I think that often you have characters who are just parallel to each other, and we're supposed to think about the same things. Um, Over and over again, like that's kind of it. um you're supposed to think about Mance's behavior and what that means for like Rhaegar, and understanding Rhaegar's like purpose. And you know whether it be like something in opposition or something being paralleled at the same time. Like, why was Rhaegar doing what he was doing? Like, to someone viewing the Mance Rayder situation, it's like, oh, Mance Rayder like wants to have war on the Seven Kingdoms. Well, no, there was a fundamental reason behind it, which was the others. Like, he wanted to have his people safe from the others. And you can kind of push that to like the Rhaegar kind of situation and say, well, like, Rhaegar was doing some crazy stuff. We don't really understand it. He wanted to. He stole this woman. Was it because of love? Was there something else political going on? Was it because of like prophecy and whatever? So, I think it's for those reasons. Like, you're supposed to look to the different people that parallel each other, and then look at their motivations and explore what it means for another character. I mean, I just think that like Mance Rayder and Rhaegar are supposed to be parallel characters. Like, that's it. As well as like Bale the Bard and even Peter Baelish. Like, they're clearly not all the same characters, but we're supposed to think about it. Like, what was Bale the Bard doing? Like, why was he acting the way he was doing? Acting, and why was Rhaegar acting the way he was doing? So I think we're just supposed to like find those things. Why do you think the anti-woke crowd likes House of the Dragon? Well, I mean, if something is good, people are gonna like it, and then they'll just like find reasons to forget about like they'll just be able to ignore the kind of like elements that they don't like about it, or twist it. Like I said, I know quite a few right wingers who love A Song of Ice and Fire, which is a pretty damn liberal book series. They're gonna find the things that they like, and so they like any entertainment. Like, the thing is, if entertainment is good entertainment, it's got good characterization, it's got good action, it's got good pacing, it's got good cinematography, good filming, people are going to like it. If something's sort of average, yeah, they can push it into like it was horrible. They can like shift something that was average to horrible. But it's hard when it's something that's pretty good to just be like, well, it was actually bad. No, it was pretty good, you know. So they just, you know, they like it because they like it because they like it. They like it because it's got good pacing and it's entertaining and it's got good characterization and it makes them feel emotions. What's very funny is that like, and I'm making this is getting to like political stuff already, but conservatives kind of really secretly hate their own ideology and they know their own ideology is wrong. It's odd, you know, like because every time they actually get anytime you actually get like a conservative person like put out there in the world like doing what they secretly want to be done, they always fail and then they go, oh, that guy doesn't like really represent us or he made us look bad. um and that goes for anything. It goes for like a debate, it goes for entertainment. Like, you know, you never get a good conservative movie, you never get good conservative comedy, you never get good, you know, it's always like once it's always presented they think they want it and then when it's presented they're like, oh, it's crap. Like because they're kind of just, you know, in self-delusion. You know, so it's it, so I think like of course they have to like anti-woke people have to like woke entertainment because it's kind of like what's out there and it's the only entertainment that's good. Like any like you know, is there an anti-woke entertainment and is there can anyone point to me like good anti-woke entertainment? There's none of it. They like so they have to like something. They have to like something. um the last vestige of Battlestar Galactica cope. The plan the plan will bring it together. Please, Cylons, have some plan that explains everything. That so after Battlestar Galactica ended, they kind of did this fix-up movie or something where they tried to like in retrospect make sense of everything that happened to Battlestar Galactica as sort of one big plan. You know, a Ford plans it all, Dornish master plan kind of like idea. Like take all of these disparate threads that didn't make sense, and then we're gonna put them together, and it's gonna be like the plan. And I actually never watched the plan, but no one like made any good comments about it. But like, but somehow like after the show is over, that the plan was gonna somehow like save what was put forward. Um, I remember when Attack of the Clones came out, there's a scene in Attack of the Clones where Jar Jar in front of is in front of the Senate and like he like is the one that does the no confidence vote and gets Palpatine in. And I remember like a fairly positive review of Attack of the Clones being like, oh, this like helps repair the Phantom Menace and it helps repair Jar Jar Binks because like you needed this goofy character to then like have this like really like serious like negative thing happen later. And it's like kind of cope, but it's really difficult to fix stuff retroactively, you know. Bran Voss noticed that Ramsay at the wedding says, "Who comes before the god? God instead of gods. Mistake? Is Ramsay a faceless man? What could this mean?" I think they just mean like a single. I've heard this quote before, and I think it just might be because it's a single tree. It might be a single god. Um, is my idea. I've heard this talk before. Like, why in this one instance is Ramsay talking about the old gods being singular? And I think it might be he sees a single tree and thinks of that as a single god. Of course, you know, in practice, like there's millions of children of the forest souls floating around, and all the trees are networked together. I'm trying to think. I mean, admittedly, I think other times people go in front of trees and say, "Oh, to the old gods," but um, I think it must. The excuse people have made is that it's a single tree and therefore it's a single god. But I don't know if there's any uh, you know, I don't think there's anything like more serious behind it. I mean, I've thought about different stuff like with regards to Ramsay and the Faceless Men. So there's when they go to when Arya goes down to meet the conspiracy group of the Faceless Men. One of them has like moist lips. I want to say. Um, Let me see here. I want to find the quote. It's kind of interesting. Let's see. Arya. He has. Um. Didn't he have plump? I swear there was like a guy at the meeting that had plump lips. I'm trying to find it here. Maybe it's another aspect to him. Hmm. Maybe I'm imagining it. Something. But I want to say there was somebody at the meeting where it could be like, huh, that could possibly look like Ramsay, but like timeline wise, there'd be like no way you could possibly get Ramsay in and out of Bravos during all of that period of time because he's busy the entire time because he has to go down from Winterfell to uh, Moat Cailin and back and things like this. But I think it's just hmm. Being John Malkovich is definitely a cult classic. Some cult classics aren't cinematic masterpieces, but but there's a reason why we still have them. Take Boondock Saints or Donnie Darko. Um, I don't know. I mean, anything can be called a cult classic if you get like two people to like it. I don't know if it's like I don't know of any people like you know having it in their collection and loving it like in the same way of Boondock Saints and Donnie Darko. Donnie Darko is a pretty good movie, but like Boondock Saints is probably the best example of like a really mid movie that like so many people have the DVD to that are like, oh my god, this movie, and it's like so. I mean, it's got a great performance from Willem Dafoe, but like the rest of the movie is just really empty. Um, uh, let's see here. Kat only ever called John bastard. She's not nice. John thinks to himself that in the past that would have sent him fleeing in tears. I mean, keep in mind that like everybody in the North calls people bastard. I mean, Tyrion calls him bastard. Like everybody calls him bastard. Like Kat's not different from anybody else. Like Kat, the whole point of Kat is that she's like part of the system and of the system. Um, and I'm trying to think like how many times. Like, is it every time that she calls him bastard? I think most of the time she just doesn't talk to him. Um, like I don't. Uh, I'm just trying to like they don't really have that many interactions. So like it's let me see here. I mean, it's not. I know that she doesn't. She calls him bastard in John 2. Um, but like one time, I know that when she's talking to Ned, she calls him John. Um, so I think it's a lot of extrapolation on like what we know. I mean, keep in mind that like John's also in his point of view, so he kind of might think that she treats him worse than she does too. So when he remembers things, so it's John thinks that he's past that. It would have sent him fleeing in tears. I mean, John's a little kid. Of course these things are gonna hurt him. Like we're forgetting that John's a little kid. He's not Kid Harrington. Okay, he's a 15-year-old boy who like you know doesn't have a mom, doesn't have a mommy. I mean, yeah, I'm not saying Cat's perfect, but like the level of like the faults. This is the thing about like anecdote and trend. Like you can find anecdotes of Cat doing crappy stuff, of course, but like you can do that for literally every single character. Okay, does anyone have the Jamie hate? Are there Jamie haters out there? Like Jamie is a horrible dude. Like he insults everybody that he talks to. Everybody that he talks to, include like Brienne especially. But then people are like, let's ship Jamie and Brienne. He like abused her the entire story, and it's like, oh, you know what they need to be? They need to be together. Like it's just like the double standard is crazy. It's Cat's fine. Cat's fine. Jeez, call John bastard one time and say it should have been you, and John too, and then all of a sudden, it's she's the worst character ever. She didn't throw a little boy out a window. You know, she didn't have sex with her sister. I mean, that we know of. The she didn't lie to anybody for years and years and years like Ned did. She didn't uh you know switch under expressed like difference from what the king said, like switch what was written on an inheritance document. Poor Cat. Um, Thoughts on Gardenbowl theory? Harris, Greygarden, and Garland wins Nightfall. Does Garland have enough of a chance uh, of making it through Euron's invasion of the Reach? I mean, in general, I think that there's only two families where you get, or three families where you get so many of them that for no reason, just like extended um, family tree, and that's Lannisters, Tyrells, and Freys. Like no other house has just this extended, um, you know, list of cousins and whatever. So I do think that like this extended list of cousins, like these cousins are definitely going to kind of be at odds with each other and take different sides. Um, anytime that happens. So, uh, will it be specifically Harris and Garland? I'm trying to think like Harris at Greygarden, Garland at Highgarden. Garland wins Nightfall. Does Garland have any chance of making it through Euron's invasion of the Reach? That's a lot of stuff to get in there before the end of the story. Because in order for Garland to get Highgarden, because Garland has Brightwater Keep, Willis has would have Highgarden if Mace Tyrell died, right? So we'd have to get the death of Mace, then we'd have to get the death of Willis, and then we'd have to have like Garland trying to take everything and be at war with Harris Tyrell. Let's Harris Tyrell. We're talking about Harris Harlaw. Is that who's Harris Harlaw's family? Or are we just talking them battling at some point? These two. I have to look at this map. Garland, Harris, Greygarden. Where's Greygarden? Oh, it is House Harlaw. House Harlaw, because he's the head of Greygarden on Harlaw. It has the name. It has the name Garden in it. Is this the idea that if two dudes that are in charge of things called garden, um, that they would fight? I mean, Gar. The problem with even the idea of Gardenbowl is that like Garland has been given Brightwater Keep. It's you have to like associate it back to Tyrells of Highgarden for the Garden Bowl. But yeah, there's definitely going to be plenty of like fights between Garland, Tyrell, and the Ironborn. I don't know specifically on Harris Harlaw. Where is Harris Harlaw these days? Um, he took the shields and he was given. Harris Planet is standard on Grimstone. Grim's Castle, he fought and defeated the Seven. So he's at the shields. And I suppose it sounds like they might fight. He's named new Lord of Grey Shield. I guess they're gonna fight. I think it's just a coincidence that they both are related to gardens. This is kind of funny. I tried watching Mario Brothers and I had to stop. It just felt like a kid's movie. Sometimes I just see these funny. um, let's see. I loved Caprica. I thought Caprica was okay. Of course, didn't. I don't think anybody watched it except for me. Um, Donnie Darko is great until you think about it. Uh, so the thing that ruins Donnie Darko, whoever edited Donnie Darko is pretty good because like all of the extra material is horrible. Like there's like this extra DVD with like all of these explanations of like who all these various characters are and like the Wandering Dead and the Returned and Noah Wiley's character dying after the movie is over for no reason. There's all this like extra stuff. But if you just look at Donnie Darko as the Last Temptation of Christ, which is the movie they go to see in the middle of the movie, it's a nice movie. It's a nice kind of reverse. Um, uh, it's a Wonderful Life, kind of realizing that the world would be a better place if he died, which is the story of Jesus, right? Like the world is a better place if Jesus dies, and the Last Temptation of Christ is this idea, like if you've ever seen it, Jesus is on the cross, and the last temptation that Satan gives to Jesus is a normal life for him, and Jesus sees his whole life play out with marrying Mary Magdalene and having children, um and it's it's a it's an interesting notion, and so he at the end though things kind of fall apart in that world, and he realizes that no, the world would have been better if he died, and so that's kind of the same thing as Donnie Darko if you view it that way. If you get into all the weeds of like the mythology and stuff of Donnie Darko, it kind of falls apart. um Donnie Darko is actually a great example of someone breaking a time loop. No, time traveling Bran. I'm trying to think of like if there was ever because in the story, the he's pulled out of the room, and the jet engine lands, and therefore he doesn't die. And so later on, that causes the time disturbance, which kills his mom and sister because they're on the airplane, which causes the jet engine to fall in. But if he dies, then he doesn't need to create the disturbance. I mean, I think it's just like, I don't know how much of a loop it is versus like he creates a paradox in time, and then they need to kill him to have the paradox not exist anymore, right? So it's not too much of a loop. I mean, you do get to the point where like it's a single back, but it's not like an endless loop, you know. Um, but you're right that like okay, if Bran is looping around forever and then finally breaks out, it is. I guess it could be. I guess it is kind of the same. The situation. Um, like where? Huh? You have to think about that. I mean, time travel breaks one's head um, when one thinks about it too much or at all, because time travel doesn't make any sense. Um, but yeah, no, that's I guess so. Trying to think. Yeah, I guess now that's when somebody's like, it makes sense if you don't think about it too much. And I was like, does Donnie Darko not make sense if you actually think about it too much? Like, why is the time disturbance even created in the first place? Is it because he creates the time disturbance with his mind because he's going nuts and like his relationship with God, and then he kind of realizes that he needs to die to make the world a better place. Um, like what actually causes time to fall apart. I suppose there's no explanation on like why time ever fell apart in the first place. Um, because where would the jet engine come from? That's the thing is he kills himself. He's grandfather paradox the whole thing, right? Because if the jet engine lands on him, and Donnie is the cause of the time vortex, and he dies, well, they're going to be searching for where this jet engine came from, and they're never going to find where the jet engine came from. Guess the movie doesn't make any sense. Fine. Fine. um when did I skip over anything? Okay. When Bran finally succeeds in escaping the sinkhole, will he be absorbed by all the other Brans, dying, becoming a Duncan Idaho super being? I think well, that is the question of like the other Brands being able to live a second life within him. I think it like even though this is how the show kind of portrays it, right? The show kind of portrays all the other knowledge of the of the previous Brands like being in him forever. But I think that kind of like takes away from the character, right? Kind of takes away from like it being this scared little boy who has to like save the world if all of a sudden, halfway through the story, the little boy becomes an unrelatable god. Um but yeah. Um The Winds of Winter comes out and finds that Cat did sleep with Edmure, and Lysa also killed Elia's kids. It was really we know no one ever saw it coming, but it was like the Tully master plan was actually the thing that actually destroyed everything. Um, John, she said, he could have kept going, she had called him, but she had never called him by his name before. Um, yeah, but did she call him by his name? Did she call him bastard every time? She probably just never talked to him. Like she steered clear from him, right? John, it could, that's the John. It could have been you, John. He could have kept going, but she had never called him by his name before. He turned to find her looking at his face, as if she were seeing him for the first time. So that's the thing is like she just kind of ignores him. I don't know if she called him bastard. She just kind of ignored him the entire time. I mean, maybe she called him bastard once or twice, but again, like Not saying Cat doesn't have faults. Like they all have faults. Every single character has faults. The point is like, does Cat deserve the hate that people put on compared to the other characters? Compared to all the other characters and all the different things that they've done. Um, you know, come on, come on. People love Jamie. They love Jamie. Doesn't make any sense. They love Tyrion. They love Tyrion. Like, did Kat ever rape anyone? Did she ever kill? Did she ever like murder anyone? Did she kill her dad? Did she strangle her boyfriend? Like, did she go into a brothel and rape a sex worker? Like, did she do any of that? Like, she was mean to John. Like, come on. Like, people love Tyrion. Did she throw a little boy out a window? Did she have sex with her sister? Like, did she systematically like abuse another character on a trip across the country for an entire book? Well, and then it's silly. It's absolutely silly. Did she kill all people about did she kill 12-year-olds in the city of Astapor? Like, did she crucify anyone? Uh you know, come on. Jeez. Freaking cat hate is ridiculous. You know who sucks is Edmure. Hold River Run, they told him. Hold River Run and guard your rear. I've checked. And he just accepts the blame. So this is the whole thing, is he went out and he defeated Tywin, but it was like the wrong pushed him in the wrong sense. Pushed, and it was not, they didn't coordinate. What's funny is, if I'm trying to think, guard our rear. I'm trying to think of, does he tell him that on page or off page? By the way, I mean, I accept that it happened, because he's sitting there being like, I told him to do this, and he accepts it. So like, so it's fine. Edmure screwed up. He didn't honor the chain of command, and one of those reasons is that Edmure wanted some glory, and he probably didn't respect Robb, um, because Robb was a little kid. So, I mean, Edmure, he suffers. He suffers. I mean, he's been in prison for for a while now. Um, I think Robb is actually Brandon's son. It doesn't affect the narrative, but adds subtle detail to Cat's character. Bias's character is in turn unsubtle. I'm trying to think about. So I'm pausing for a moment, because there's been so many timelines of Robert's Rebellion, but the base of all of the timelines for Robert's Rebellion is Robb's birthday, and like when he was born, and like and how it related to like the Battle of the Bells and things like that. However, if you actually like pull the sheet out and say like, well, what if like Ned is not the father, then how that would affect everything, and if that would just like shatter the entire timeline. Um, and when would, maybe, it's the idea that cat gets hot and bothered when she sees Littlefinger get defeated in a duel, and starts banging Brandon. Um, does that sound like, I mean, it's kind of a funny thing. I mean, it would add stuff to the story in the sense that Robb's actually the bastard, and not Jon, but like, or just as much of a bastard. I'm trying to think, but I'm sure like timeline wise it might not work out. But nothing works out back then with the timeline, so it's fine. That's interesting. I have to go back and think about the implications of like Robb, like how much time, because it's like I mean it is many months before the last time Brandon sees Catelyn, right? Because Brandon then has to go to King's Landing, get killed, then they're gonna, then at that point Ned is going to leave the Vale, go all the way up to Winterfell, rally the North, march them down for the Battle of the Bells. Like already the timeline doesn't make sense because like Ned does that insanely fast, but to have it be done so insanely fast that he wouldn't notice that like Robb is like months off in age would be a little weird, you know, because Kat would be like 3 months pregnant when he's like getting married to her and stuff like that. Probably wouldn't work, but it's an interesting nonetheless. Would Jon kind of assume that Ronnet would be allowed to ride ahead with the Tyrell horse? I see no reason for that, but his whole plan is based on that. Well, they specifically talk about there being scouts in the observing like Ronnet coming, and so even if Ronnet is not like, he's getting reports that the horse are going ahead of the infantry by scouts like leading up to the battle. And this is kind of, now, to assume that would happen, I imagine he would have a contingency plan if like, or a different plan if Ronnet like did not go ahead with the horse. They need to have a lot longer to wait. And they'd probably have to come up with a different plan. But the time travel stuff in Donnie Darko was a bit iffy. Great soundtrack though. Cellar Door. I think Labia Lips sounds better. Yeah, I mean the time travel stuff is not supposed to like necessarily make sense, but it's supposed to be a metaphor for God's plan, and because like, so everybody talks like the contradiction with believing in God is that if God is the master of the universe and has a plan for everything, why would he give us free will? And he's sort of saying that we have free will to go off of God's plan, that yes, he's the master of time and this is, God's plan, and we have the free will to go off. But when we go off, we create sin and we create problems, and the universe collapses upon itself, at least for that individual themselves. I think it's something like that. I'm not saying it makes sense, because again, time travel doesn't make sense, nor does religion. So like, it's trying to take two things that don't make sense and making sense of them. But that is kind of the idea, is that time travel is deterministic because God has a plan. And of course, like, if God is the knowledge, like the grand master of the universe, he would know where everything is going, right? And so, but how does that relate to free will? Well, free will is us trying to time travel and creating disaster, creating sin or something. Uh, they searched for the engine in the movie, but it came from no plane. That was kind of the point. Yeah, yeah. I mean, but it still does have to come from somewhere, right? Like this is the grandfather paradox. Like it can't actually come out from nowhere. Um, the wormhole is random. He doesn't create it. He's just schizophrenic and haunted by the ghost who leads him out of bed. But I see what you're saying because there's nothing in story. Like I agree with you that there's nothing in story that um says that he creates the wormhole. That the wormhole is just a random natural disaster that was going to destroy the world, and he has to save the world. And this is a metaphor for like Jesus and sin and stuff like that. That Jesus needs to die on the cross to die for the sins of mankind to save mankind. Donnie Darko needs to die being crushed by the jet engine to fix the wormhole and to end the problems in time. But the problem is that like sin is created by man. Like so Jesus is dying on the cross for a problem created by man. Like in order for the analogy and the theme to hold, like the sin of man needs to create that whole. So like it needs to be Donnie Darko's like actions. So I mean, it may not be specifically Donnie's actions that create the wormhole, like his time travel in his mind and whatever. It might have been everybody in the town, like Patrick Swayze and everybody, like everybody's like sins and actions are creating the wormhole. But like thematically, it has to be that, or else it doesn't like hold. Like something has to create the wormhole, because otherwise, like what's the point? Like what's the message with God in the story? Like what's the Christ like message there? Um, um, how's Ironborn succession different? We're told that Roderick Hardlaw's older sister Annis wants to rule, but Roderick acts like making his niece Asha heir instead of his cousin goes against succession. Um, Let me look at this up real quick. I mean, there is an issue in the sense that like there's like old Ironborn succession, and then there's Greenlander succession, and they're kind of like at odds with each other. But let me see here. Roderick the Reader, because Roderick the Reader. Right. Okay. I thought the whole thing about the Harlaws is that the cousin is trying to usurp Marin. Let me see here. His eldest sister and widow after Lady. His eldest sister, widow, mother of Roderick. Because there is a usurping. Because one of the Harlaws supports Euron and the other doesn't, right? Because Roderick the Reader is the heir to 10 Towers. So he is. Oh, he has sons, right? Roderick the Reader has a. We're talking about like are we talking about the Iron Islands? Or are we talking about like the 10 Towers? Because I think Roderick actually has sons. Oh no, they died. They died at Fair Isle. Never mind. Okay, so his sons are dead. So succession wise, it should go to his Oh, I see. No, this is just yeah. So at this point, Succession gets a little weird when the minute you go off of like the main nuclear family. So Roderick only has sisters, and so um he's talking about succession going to his sister's daughter versus a male cousin. And there's no succession precedent. I think even in Westeros, even in the Greenlands, for who would take succession at that point, because you're talking um it would all be like done on a case by case basis. Um, once it gets kind of messy like that, because we're talking like a sister's daughter, and the sister is still alive. So really, the sister, yeah, no, it was given to the sister, but should it be the cousin? I'm sure that's like I guess that's no giving it to Alanis would be, but she would be heir. Yeah, I think it's just like a one. I think it's just kind of like messy stuff because of women ruling in general. But I think it gets even worse when we're talking about like Ironborn and like more sexist society. But I think Roderick's heir would be his sister. Um, if he wanted it, but I could see a cousin staking a claim. I mean, we get this even in with Alice Stark, an uncle coming in and taking it from a daughter. Um, so uh, 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 um, Sansa's the worst. Cat started the war. All of these things that are just not true. Um, Tommen, hate that bitch. Do you think we will get payoff to Sam and Randall's story? They meet in the show, but don't know if they will ever talk again. Um, Randall is pretty far from Sam. If there were going to be payoff, it would be Dream of Spring, and there's never going to be a Dream of Spring. So, I mean, even like you could ask, like, is there a chance they could meet each other in the Winds of Winter? That'd be tough. That'd be really, really tough because like Sam is down in Old Town, and Randall is not just in King's Landing, but he's like very busy in King's Landing, very, very busy, dealing with armies and stuff like that. To have them both like they would have to both have reasons to one would have to have a reason to go to Old Town or the other like out and flee. I just there's no chance that the two characters are going to meet at this point, at least in the Winds of Winter. Was it planned for a Dream of Spring? Probably, but I can't see it happening in the Winds of Winter. And so even if we got the Winds of Winter, which is a very low chance, um, it's we're not going to see resolution there. Maybe in a Dream of Spring, but Dream of Spring is never coming out. So that's just that's just that's just that. Now, the fanfic will have some Randall Sam payoff. You got to have those two characters meet. I mean, you know, it's a big important part of Sam's life is his father's abuse and what it did to him. It's like the fundamental aspect of his character. So it needs to happen. But I mean, the show tried to have a little payoff, like tried to have Sam like stand up for himself, stand up for Gilly. So, do you think Tywin planned Duskendale? No, though I think no, I don't think Tywin planned Duskendale. I think there was something else going on with like um what what they sort of believed they could get out of him. I think, I kind of like think that they were trying to get his seed or something, that maybe Aerys was actually like raped in that dungeon by the by the guy's wife. I don't think it was any sort of like planning, like rebel against this tax, or whatever, right? Wasn't that it? Wasn't that it? Was Duskendale? Was it a tax situation? I had seen wealth shrink and dwindle. Dennis Darkland wished to halt the decline, so he wanted to win a charter that similar to what Dorne had. And so Tywin rejected the proposal, and they were infuriated by Tywin's refusal. And so they would eventually um, they ceased paying taxes. I mean, it would be trying to think, like, for it to be Tywin's plan, he would have to be like, yeah, I'm gonna reject this request to have the tax off, um, and then purposely advise Aerys, knowing that he was going to do the opposite of what I wanted to do, which is what Cersei does in a Game of Thrones, right? Because Tywin tells him not to go, and then he goes. So it'd have to be like in that Cersei sense, like advise him not to do it. But even that Cersei thing was made up by Varys. Like you're gonna be part of the melee. Don't be part of the melee. I want to be part of the melee, and that was all like made up by Varys anyway. But it would have to be something like that. It'd be very difficult for Tywin to plan that sort of thing. Why was everyone else fine with Rhaegar's kids being killed off by Ned? Did all the other great houses lords want to end House Targaryen as well? Well, we kind of know specifically that at least Mathis Rowan was not okay with it. We know that Mathis Rowan specifically thought the entire situation was gross and bad. And I think the implication is that along with Mathis Rowan, there is a lot of like secret sympathy among a lot of Reachers that this was the situation. Now, so I don't think it was all the great lords, but I do think that the Southern Ambition like conspiracy was real and predated any of Rhaegar's like actions. Like I definitely do, like, out of nowhere, all of a sudden the great lords are looking to marry each other, and there seemed to be some sort of conspiracy going on, because even if you're talking about the Aaron Tully Stark Baratheon alliance, like even beyond that, we have elements of Dorne shopping around for marriages with the Hightowers and with the Lannisters. The Lannisters shopping around for marriages with the Tullys. These things were definitely there, and so there could have been a big link, and it seemed to be very close to have a big link of the 8, or I'm trying to count the houses, but at least the Martells, the Hightowers, the Lannisters, the Tullys, all the Aarons, like the Starks and everyone, like the Baratheons, kind of all marrying each other and like being in a big alliance. So I think maybe people had a problem with it, but they just kept quiet because they didn't want to lose their lands. They didn't want to get killed. They didn't want to get exiled. All the things that might come. Plus, like, honestly, say you're in a situation where you're in a room, and a bunch of dudes with swords like hack some children to pieces. Okay, you're unarmed and you're in this room. Are you going to be like, dude, not cool? Like, no, those people are psychotic. Like, you're going to keep quiet because they're probably going to kill you. And that's what would have happened. Like, all of these people, all of these houses that lost the war, they were in a situation where they could have been exiled. They could have lost their lands, the same as the Blackfires. They could have had all of their lands like given away to to loyal, minor houses in the north and Riverlands and Vale. And for the most part, Robert forgave all of them. He let everybody like keep their lands. And they didn't want to screw that up. They didn't want to shake the boat. So essentially Robert bribed them and they were all cool with it. So um so yeah, no, they didn't like it. But are you gonna destroy your family over a baby and a little girl that are already dead? Why? Maybe it's gonna come up later, but you know, no one was willing to stick their neck out like that. Why does Lyanna have your statue in the crypt? The only reason I can think is that she was still alive. Brandon definitely boned Catelyn after the duel with Littlefinger. There's a question about so her and Brandon too. Like she and Brandon both have statues, and that's very odd because they were not lords of Winterfell, and I'm trying to think. There might be one other Stark that might have a statue, and I think it was like a brother that died in a Sagagosi uprising. He might have also not been, but it's just like great, somebody that's honored quite a bit. So there definitely needs to be some sort of explanation. Fans have talked about this quite a bit. Like, what's the reason that the two of them, Brandon and Lyanna, have statues? Because it also seems like Ned has a slight problem with Brandon. You get this like kind of annoyance, and yet he honors him by building a statue. So we'll see what it is. I mean, at least for the fanfic, we're gonna open it up to good explanations on what exactly Ned did at Starfall and why is Lyanna and Brandon's like statues in the crypts, because I don't really have a very good explanation for it. Like other than just the blanket one that Bran gives, that his father really loved him. Okay. Um Gun violence is becoming more prevalent. My dad does con law and is concerned the Supreme Court ruling in February will make it very difficult to make significant changes through the courts. He thinks public opinion is most important. Thoughts? I do think public opinion is most important. It's pretty disgusting what's happening to America right now. The fact that that being a gun nut is now pretty mainstream, and it can't, like, the fact that, say, the leaker this weekend that was arrested, like, everyone, he would sit around posting like far right, like, gun nut stuff online, and it's no longer a signal to anyone that this person is a security threat, like, and so it's really it's weird stuff. It's weird stuff that it's now like mainstream for someone to have these like weird beliefs that everyone should have a machine gun, and that that democracy is not, and that Joe Biden didn't win the election, and January 6th people should be sympathized with, and all these sorts of things. It's beyond the gun stuff. It's the fact that like terrorist ideals are now mainstream and are just considered normal. And take this back like 20-25 years. A lot of people say like, I don't understand in the Middle East how the Middle East functions, or how all of these Middle East governments and peoples could tolerate these terrorists. Like, and I remember this, everybody blaming like, oh, I don't understand why these Middle Eastern countries like don't stop these terrorists. Why can't they like root these terrorists out in their communities and stuff like this? And then lo and behold, like 20 years later, America is that situation where we have these right wings that that joke about terrorism, not so joke about terrorism, have their conspiracy theories, talk about militias and guns and presidents not being legitimate and democracy not being legitimate. And it's just like, that's just Fox News. Like, that's just regular stuff that you're going to see on Facebook. It's pretty insane. It's pretty insane that we've become this thing that we're just like around 9/11. We're like, how did this happen? How did this happen? Yeah, it's super scary. It's super scary. And obviously, like, um, you know, I'm a bleeding heart liberal. I think guns should be banned. Just done. Or I think you've all like heard my other idea about like either banned or all guns need to be painted pink with glitter and unicorns all over them, and they need to say like "I love Dick" on the side. One of the two would be pretty effective in vastly decreasing violence and the death of children in America. And the threats to overthrow of our government, you know. So it's I don't know which one though. I think maybe the glitter and unicorns would be, and the I love Dick would be more effective in actually getting people to stop using these freaking like horrible metal tubes to design to shoot lead into children. Have you seen the movie Nightcrawler? It's awesome. I have not seen Nightcrawler. Is Nightcrawler? Oh, I guess we started thinking about this because it's another Jake Gyllenhaal movie, and we were talking about Donnie Darko. I have not seen it. I have not seen it. I'll see that sometime. So many regrets that the cat talk is still going. Of course, the fact that that it's continuing to go shows like it just goes in and shows the bias against her and the sexism. The first scene of the movie is his entire family dying on the plane the engine comes from. What? What? Really? What? It, wait, it relates to Donnie Darko, really? Or is it just like? Let me see this. Oh, I have to see. I have to see this. I don't know if that's a joke or what. I'm trying like somehow relating Nightcrawler to Donnie Darko, but um um, or we just talk. um Ned could have rallied the North in another sense, and he leads the North Army south, not rally them in one place. It's just that they talk about him returning to Winterfell. He gets in like this boat, and there's this story about the fisherman's daughter, which the fisherman's daughter relates to Windhaven and things like this. But I think he definitely goes back, or at least we're told he goes back to Winterfell. Um, I seriously doubt your commitment to Sparkle Motion. I am committed to Sparkle Motion. I want Sparkle Motion to be on every single gun sold in America. Um, all doors are wooden except underground. Beneath Castle Black and the House of Black and White, they are iron steel doors, not very medieval. Well, that's true. I mean, why would you be like how? Where are they getting these? I mean, you're right that like that kind of goes against if this is true, they be at least bronze doors, um where are they getting these? Let's go back to this description of like the the crypts or something like that. Are there even doors down there? But if that's the case, yeah. I mean, how old can these doors? How old can these doors be? Um, I have to look back and see what door descriptions there are in Castle Black and the House of Black and White. Um, about John Malkovich, one thing I miss in the '90s is the fact that the films you could have an evil protagonist. Um, I mean, certainly having evil protagonists is like fine and interesting, but you know you have to also have like a protagonist be relatable. Like you know, in that evilness, you have to have something that's sort of like alluring and interesting. And when I think about John Malkovich and John Cusack's like performance, is there anything alluring about that character? He's this like very unlikable, like pathetic, you know, greasy character who's just into puppets. Like his one feature is that he's into puppets and that he falls hopelessly in love with this one woman who's also unlikable. Like I don't even get it. Like uh that after he's trapped in the body of the daughter, he's still sitting there being like, "Oh, I love you." And it's like why? Like what was so appealing about her? So it's just none of the motivations really like make any sense to me. Um like why was he in love with this woman? What was alluring about her? What was you know, nothing really connected to nothing connected with me. Nothing connected with me at all. Maxine was the character. Like why would this character love Maxine so much? What was so great about Maxine? You know, why was she so much better than Cameron Diaz? I don't know. Do other glass candle users know what each others are doing, or in the dreams, or are they sending people use? Or are they sending to people using glass candles? Does Euron know what Quaithe has sent to Danny? Really enjoyed the Vincent stream. Um, I don't necessarily. I mean, it seems that Quaithe knows that Urathon Nightwalker is using a glass candle. Um, and she seems to be using a glass candle, and Marwyn seems to be using a glass candle, but we never get any talk about other people like using them and talking to each other, or like even being aware of their own, um, uh, even being aware of each other. We do get a mention that there's four glass candles in the world, right? Is that's the and that's an odd little statement because like why are we even told that there's four of them? Right? Doesn't he say one green and three black were brought to the Citadel? But even that, like, if there's one in Urathon Nightwalker's house, then there's more than that. So, but you know, what's the point of the green and the blacks? Um, other than, I mean, are those colors? Do those colors even mean anything? Does it relate to the Dance of the Dragons? The greens and the blacks, you know? So I don't know. I don't know. So this is just kind of random. So I don't think the character. I mean, I know Quaithe knows that other glass candle users are out there because she says the glass candles are burning, but I don't know if necessarily the other characters are aware. Um, your video on free will versus predestination was amazing. The point you made that we have free will, yet most of our choices are predetermined was poignant. Yeah, it's an odd thing because like uh, at some point, you know, the things that we might have free will about are like completely random things. Like, oh, do I want cheese on my Whopper? Okay, but those sorts of things like don't really affect anything. But the really deep ones that really affect our lives, like where should I go to this college or this college? Should I marry this person or this person? Those sorts of things that we tend to put very deep thought into and weigh the options, and so the major things that would actually affect our lives would not be the whimsical free will stuff. It would be like a conscious like weighing of all of the goods and the bads. So yeah, maybe we don't have free will. Who knows? Who knows? Was Pycelle at Summerhall? I mean, you'd think that the Summerhall mace, like this, whoever was at Summerhall, like would have died. Um, but let me look into that. Let me see here. That's a funny thing. Didn't at one point he talk about being in Old Town as a young man? Let's see here. All right, so Pycelle's an old dude. He's like 84, and so Summerhall is around when Rhaegar is born. So that's probably what the off the top of my head I'm saying that the 260s. So 259. So Pycelle would be he'd be certainly alive, but he'd be like a young, like sprightly 43-year-old man. And there's no way that so Pycelle is a Lannister crony. So he's definitely like brought in probably after oh wait, Pycelle is definitely like there during Robert's Rebellion, and he's definitely a Lannister crony. So he has to be there. The earliest he could possibly be there is when Tywin is hand. So let's see when Tywin is hand. Because no one's gonna bother bringing him in as Grand Maester unless he's hand, and he is hand of the king. He fights in the War of the Nine Penny Kings. Royal Page served. When does he become? He becomes hand of the king in. Jaehaerys dies in 262, and Aerys chooses his friend Tywin as hand of the king. So I'm going to say there is no way that Pycelle was at Summerhall, because he's only going to get brought in as Grand Maester after Tywin is hand of the king. Tywin doesn't become hand of the king until 262. Summerhall happens in 259. So there's no reason for him to be there, unless he happened to be the Maester at Summerhall. But that's a darn big coincidence. So, but I would say riddling it out, no. Da, 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 da. I'm surprised Carmine hasn't come in yet, man. He's been lurking. He's lurking. A limit on time traveling Bran's power is his need to be subtle, suggestive, indirect to avoid being discovered by the Children of the Forest faction in the memories of the minds they enter. It is true that, whatever the Children of the Forest are planning, if they can go into people's minds and pretty much read them and influence thought, like if they were in Bran's mind, they would kind of know that there's some trouble, and that if he decides to do something, he would have to do it kind of suddenly and secretly. So that is something to think about. about like whose consciousness is around and who's observing home. I have to look at this. It's an interesting idea. I mean, we're definitely gonna. I think the Bran chapter is gonna come sooner than later. By the way, so it's definitely like in the short list of the next fan fiction chapters. Let's look at the Economist cover. Somebody's asking me about the latest leak. Let's see here. I'm not seeing the latest one. Maybe I have to go to theeconomist.com. What's the current issue? Come on. Oh well, I'm not finding the latest Economist cover online right now. Is it the AI's New Frontier? But nonetheless, the Pentagon leak is it's something that's not too surprising. Like knowing how, like, knowing how government security clearances work. Let's say a lot of people ask like how did this guy get a security clearance, and I'm like, security clearances aren't that in depth. Like they're not finding anything that's, they don't ask the right questions, and they're not going to find the warning signs. And this is what I'm talking about, like the problem with like right wing crazy white militia belief being kind of like mainstream now. When you do a security clearance, it's essentially you essentially write down every place you lived in the past 10 years, every place you went to school, every job you had, in the past 10 years. And they do a credit check. They ask you about your drug use. And then they call a person that you put down, like it's your contact from each of these places. So like your friend from college, your friend from your last work, your supervisor from your last work, your next door neighbor. For the most part, your friends vouch for you, your supervisors vouch for you, your neighbors vouch for you. That's tends to be the world. Like, and most people know how to put like a nice public face forward anyway. So these ideas, and so like the things that are really like striking about this kid that was the fact that he was like a gun nut and a right wing like zealot, and like didn't believe like Biden was president and all of those sorts of things. But that's like a mainstream Republican now. So how are you supposed to like flag that? The fact that like being an anti-government nut is now mainstream and normal, which is just so like what are you gonna do? Like how is he gonna fail his security clearance? Plus, like he's 21. Like security clearances, like they only go back to the age of 18. It's it's very, very easy. It's like the reason people don't get security clearances and the reasons people do get security clearances are just kind of off. Like you've just, let's see here. I meant Jon spread the rape rumor to bait an army south, but that would have been Aegon's doom without Ronnet allowed to ride ahead. He has no allies yet. I mean, Jon spread the rumor to bait the army south, but that would have been Aegon's doom without Ronnet allowed to ride ahead. He has no allies yet. Though the rumor of their landing is going to happen, and so the army is going to head south. In fact, like epilogue of Dance with Dragons, they hear about the they hear about the landing. Like it's happening. The Tyrells are going to go south no matter what. And then we hear about this rape rumor in the Arion sample chapters. And so it's like it was mainly me trying to take these two pieces of information that George put and make them fit. Like, why is this rape rumor out there, and how can that be helpful, and like how would it relate, like how would it affect things? And the people were saying, oh, Ronnet is leading the charge to go south, and that's advantageous for Jon. So either you have a situation where George R. R. Martin wrote a random thing that's advantageous for Jon, or Jon planned it, and which makes a better story. And I thought Jon planning it makes a better story. The Tyrell army was going to go down, and anyway, all right, they're gonna ride anyway. And so we need elements that are going to help Jon. And either you can have these elements happen by random happenstance, that, Ronnet just happened to believe that an ugly rumor that Jon Con had like raped his sister, or you make it part of Jon's plan. And so it's it was really trying mostly to take George's pieces and put them in. I mean, even timeline wise, it's a little weird that Ariane hears the rumor when she does. Like, I had to like force it with certain days and timelines, and having Ravens go super fast to like make it happen, because it's kind of George's screw up that rumor would be out there anyway. Other than it just being a random thing, like, oh, I heard a random rumor that has no part into the story. Well, I mean, why introduce Ronnet wanting to prove himself in the epilogue, and why introduce a rumor that Jon raped Ronnet's sister, which would make him furious, and that he's leading this vanguard, unless there was some truth to that, or unless Jon planned it. So I was just trying to take George stuff and make it more realistic. But yeah, they were already heading south. Now the bait, I suppose, is to like try to pull the horsemen ahead, and try to make it a more realistic win. Because how's Jon Con gonna win against an army that's much bigger than him? Like, it's just twice as big. Like, even if all of Jon's forces arrived, he's at 10,000 and they're like 20,000. Like, there's just no way. So you gotta do something. Gotta do something. This is mainly, but these are things that George put in there. So, let's see. Sorry, it was Donnie's mom and little sister on the plane. Yeah, it was they'd gone to the Sparkle Motion. They'd gone to the Sparkle Motion meeting, or the thing, or the mom had to go to the Sparkle Motion thing because Donnie Darko had burned down Patrick Swayze's house, and they found all the child porn, and so she had to go as a chaperone. They even make a point of the plane numbers matching the engine part numbers. Really, a Nightcrawler? This is really weird. We'll have to see this. It's very, very odd. I never asked what do you think happened at Summerhall? Do you think Aegon commit the unthinkable and try to sacrifice an infant? Did Dunk try to stop him? No, I think it's more that they got a bunch of eggs and maybe some wildfire, and we're trying to do something or other to hatch dragon eggs, and something went south. I don't necessarily think there was any sort of like blood sacrifice or anything like that. Or at least, that would be a big jump. I mean, that would be a very dark, big jump if it was something like that. Um, I guess it would make it much more interesting, right? That like Aegon's character change goes really far, and there's this huge break between Dunk and Egg. I mean, that would be something. I mean, how it's written now, it sounds like, oh, there was this fire, and Dunk like saved all of these people and then died trying to save all these people. We don't have any hint or even inkling that Egg ever went bad or ever went dark in any sense. So him trying to hatch eggs by itself is already pretty dark. Him trying to do something crazy like blood sacrifice, that's super super dark. I mean, that's I admit that's George S. It's very George esque. In all honesty, I don't think George has decided yet. I think it's one of those mystery boxes that he kind of created, and um, he hasn't actually like thought it out. We'll probably never get an explanation of what happened at Summer Hall, but um HBO is going to miss the mark on Dunk and Egg. If they cut Maynard Plum, I'm going to riot. I can't see them. I mean, they can't cut Maynard Plum, right? Like, Maynard Plum is like one of the best parts of the entire story. You can't cut that. That's like an essential part. I'm trying to think of like, I mean, I suppose they cut Mushroom and Septon Eustace and all of those characters. I mean, they appear as like background characters, but man, but we're gonna have a while. So like before we even get to Maynard, because um, George claims that. So when we're talking about Dunk and Egg, the three written stories are the Hedge Knight, the Sworn Sword, and uh, and the Mystery Knight. And we know that like the fourth story has been at least outlined for the She Wolves of Winterfell. But there is a second story that happens in between the Hedge Knight and the Sworn Sword, which is like the Dornish adventure. But but George hasn't thought about it. He just knows that there's an adventure that has to happen in Dorne that they reference in the Sworn Sword. So you have to kind of go the Hedge Knight, the Dornish Adventure, the Sworn Sword, the Mystery Knight, the She Wolves of Winterfell, and then George has an idea for a story called the Village Hero, which happens in the Riverlands, which um, is a sort of sixth story. But will George ever get around to writing the Dornish Adventure? Like he doesn't have very much time now. He has to write the Dornish Adventure in like 3 years. He's got to get it. He's got to get it done. He's got to get that. He's got to get that done. I don't know if so. Maybe they'll just skip the Dornish Adventure. But um, Carmine, dude, I miss you. Where have you been? Where have you been today? Where have you been? He, Earlier this morning, he's like, I just gotta eat some breakfast. I'll be on in like 15-20 minutes. I was like, okay, you know, he's not talking about Nightcrawler. I know that the plane that the mother and everybody are on is the thing, but I was just keep thinking it's like we talking about Nightcrawler. Like the I'm reading a book and the author argues that compromise is actually detrimental to making serious progress. Thoughts? That's a little silly. I mean, I'll tell you this: you cannot like be in a serious relationship without compromise. You cannot like hold down jobs without compromise. Like um, compromise is everything. Um, the question is like serious progress, like revolutionary progress, because there's a lot of progress that happens like only on little compromise. I mean, for we got same-sex marriage passed in America without anybody's blood being spilled, and it was like a series of compromises that kind of like happened over time. Trying to think. I don't know. I mean, it's such a broad thing to say. Like, can you really can, in all situations? Because certain like some situations you can't compromise, and some situations you have to compromise. That's thus this anyone can read a book, even idiots. um. Maynard Plum is Duncan Egg, or they'd cut Bloodraven, right? I mean, you gotta. They never call him. Do they ever? They don't even call him Bloodraven in the show, do they? The actor passed away, right? For Bloodraven, for the show Bloodraven. Kingsguard being in an indefinite position seems like a bad idea. Anyone in an indefinite position is a horrible idea, including Kingsguard and Supreme Court justices. That is ridiculous. Ridiculous that anyone has that sort of stuff. All right. Hello. You're back.
What do you mean I'm back? This is the first time I'm here. What do you mean? Yeah, kind of back, yes. How you feeling, by the way? You feeling all right?
Yeah, I'm a little tired. My kids have been like sick for days, and like kind of one gets sick and then he gives it to the other, and so it's exhausting. Plus, my family was in town, and I was showing them Taiwan, and it was just a lot at once. It was a lot at once, and so I'm a little tired, and but I'm getting through. I'm getting through it.
To the audience who are curious, we did do a discussion, full podcast discussion on the Duncan Egg announcement. I'll put it out tomorrow or something. And part 2 of our Trey convo, I'll put that out. I'll make sure you put it on your Patreon. I'll put it on mine. Give it to Trey too. Trey's finally doing stuff with his Patreon. I'm proud of him.
Yeah. I think he's getting a little motivated to do some videos and do some research. Everybody loves.
Well, he's living by himself now, so he can't live with his parents anymore. They can't pay he's got to pay the water bill.
Yeah. So he's decided to move out to Nebraska with you.
Nebraska, of all places. Ugh.
Yeah, let me headphones you up. I used to not like their echo cancellation on Ecamm used to work really well, and then all of a sudden it just stopped working. So I don't know. Actually, for some reason my thing says like echo cancellation disabled for current output. What the fuck? What's wrong with these people? What's wrong with these people? So, Carmine, have you gotten around to reading Duncan Egg yet?
No. So for those of you who don't know, I know what happens in the series. I know what happens in the stories, but I haven't like gone through with a fine-tooth comb yet. I should, though. I kind of want to get the audiobooks. A couple people have offered to send it to me. I don't fucking know you guys. I'm not going to take that. No. Do you have the audiobooks?
I don't have the audio. I thought that the audio were on YouTube. Or at least they were for a while. I sent you the written, right?
I can
send you them again. The audiobooks are on you can David Reed's A Song of Ice and Fire also has them, and then there's a bunch of them on here. I think somebody read them.
The Sworn Sword. Gallant outlaws behind every bush.
Yeah, there's one where there's one that narrates them with the graphic novel in front of you. Because they were all adapted for graphic novels. That's all on YouTube. So you have little excuse. You have
I'll
little
probably just get
excuse.
the PDF and just download it and just check it out. There's a
I'll,
comic as well,
I'll
you know.
send you the PDF. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's someone reading the story with the comic right there. Like, you've got it.
By the way, real quick, you did a super chat a while ago with Joel the Dreamer about why do you think the anti woke crowd liked Hot D. I have a different take on that, if you don't mind.
Sure.
It's because they're not fucking stupid. First and foremost, let me make like a quick point with this one.
I
There's
mean,
a YouTuber
they
by the
are
name of
fucking stupid, but they're also
well, not
they're not that
stupid.
stupid.
I'll show you one guy who's incredibly dumb. Everyone liked season 1, episode 1 of Mandalorian. Like everybody did. However, this one YouTuber, his name is Robot Head, didn't get the memo. Robot Head needs to like suck Ryan Johnson's dick for helping him make his channel. Because if it wasn't for Ryan Johnson's Last Jedi, Robot Head would not have a career. And
Right.
Robot Head has spent his entire career shitting on The Last Jedi and has gotten millions of views for it. Some of his criticisms are fair, some are just dumb. He didn't get the memo that you're not supposed to blindly hate everything, just the woke stuff. And there was nothing really woke about the pilot for Mando, so he hated on it. And his likes and dislikes are split right in the middle. 16,000 likes, 16,000 dislikes. He got a lot of hate.
That's quite a ratio.
He got a lot of hate for ripping on Mando's pilot. And he didn't get the memo. They're not supposed to hate on everything. Just the stuff that has
Keep in mind for
women.
people, like, even my most contentious videos that I've ever done, the lowest, the highest dislike ratio I've ever had is 86% like, 14% dislike. That's the like most contentious I've ever had. And even like Carmine, like, I forget which video it was, but Carmine was like, "Whoa, dude, you got like a lot of dislikes on your video." I was like, "Yeah, I got up to like 14%. To have 50% dislikes is insane." I don't know how you, because you have loyal fans who like all of your videos. Those ones are awesome. All of my users clearly do that, right? Like, if I just go, "Hey guys, like this video," like, you're gonna do it. You get people like that, but man,
But
50%.
remember, like the dislikes, like people will like your video one time on their like main account, but if they're gonna like really dislike it, they're motivated to really dislike it, which means they're gonna dislike it on their main account and go on their alt account and dislike it there. Remember, we disproved this a while ago when we talked about Rings of Power. You didn't really have the dislikes you had. It was like actually cut in half because people were getting on second or third accounts to dislike it because they really wanted to stick it to you.
Yeah, exactly. How's the Birth of Dragons video series going? I have a script for the first episode of it, about half written. It's going to be kind of like long and meandering, but probably the next video that's going to be coming out is another overanalyzing, and I'm kind of also started on the Daemon Hero video, but all kind of working concurrently. And fucking putting together the Sam chapter. But so, the past couple of weeks have been super busy with sick kids and showing the family around. So we'll see how it goes. Preston, can we pay you to read Dunk and Egg to Carmine? That would be a funny thing, like story time, like me and Carmine just reading it aloud, and then him like breaking in and being like, "What the hell is this?" Wait,
Do you
what?
remember when you asked me to? I think your wife did one reading. You asked me one time. You were doing Thousand Worlds Book Club.
Yeah. I asked you to read a story, and you were like, "No, I'm not going to do that."
Oh, because I'm not a George fan. I'm a fan of Ice and Fire. I'm not a George fan. You're a George R. R. Martin fan, like through and through. You know all of his like mannerisms and all of his like ideas, and you know his backstory. I didn't know that he like had a super crush on this woman who like dated his best friend or something like that, right?
Well, it happened to him twice. He dated. He had an ex like leave him for his best friend, and then he had another ex like leave him, and then start dating another guy in the community in their like sci-fi writers community, and so like it happened to him a couple times within the period of like 2 or 3 years. Yeah.
Also, fuck you, Ross. I see that. That was we know you prefer looking at pictures. Mods ban that man. Uh, but did you want to talk about George's blog post?
Yeah, sure. We can talk about George's blog post.
So I didn't read it. I hope you did.
Yeah, I read it.
Phenomenal. What is he saying it? Because if it's not a Winds of Winter announcement, I don't care. Like, that's all I'm here for.
It's mostly about Dunk and Egg. It's so, but he goes into some interesting stuff. So I mean, he goes into like history. Oh shoot, did he take it down? The thing you sent me, you sent it to me. You're like, read this for me because I cannot read. You're like, is this in Portuguese? I can't read it.
Ironically, people have asked me privately to read them like the books or like a passage in Portuguese. My like first off, my Portuguese is as good as yours, and I can't read it. So,
first of all, I've heard you like talking to like your mom on like another like to the side in fluent Portuguese.
Holy
so
shit.
Don't give me that fucking shit. Like you.
When I talk to my mom, that's like 20% Portuguese, and the rest is like English, and it's just me praying that she understands the English part. Because like, holy shit, like it's so bad, dude. It is so bad. It is so bad.
All right. So George says the news is all over the internet right now. Coming to Max is going to be Dunk and Egg. They're going to call it Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, the Hedge Knight. And he goes in and says, like, I understand that fans call the series like Dunk and Egg, and a lot of fans wanted it to be the Adventures of the Dunk and Egg, but he said that Dunk and Egg sounds like a sitcom, like Laverne and Shirley or Beavis and Butthead, and so they wanted Knight in the title. I think that's, I mean, I guess he wants Knight in the title ironically, because like he says knighthood and chivalry are central themes of the story. That's true, but Dunk is not a knight. That's the kind of the joke. But I would have liked the Hedge Knight. I think that would have been fine. He says, other than the title, what can I tell you? Not a lot. He has 3 stories that and that they've been put together in the published together as a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. The pilot has already been written, and the season is going to be following the Ashford tourney from the Hedge Knight. He says that Ryan Condal is on board. Ira Parker wrote the pilot, and Ira Parker wrote the 4th episode of Hot D, King of the Narrow Sea. And Ryan Condal's on board. Ryan Condal is executive producer, and so is he. They don't know when the season premiere will be. No idea when shooting is going to be. Writing is underway. They have a talented team of writers. And I think at some point he says there's going to be like 6 episodes, maybe, but he doesn't know actually. So he just like threw out that number. And then he starts talking about the series in general, about like the Dornish adventure and the village hero and the She-Wolves of Winterfell, and how he hadn't decided if there was going to be like 7 or 10 of these stories. And then he says to everybody to go out and buy A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms at the bookstore, or go to your local comic shop and buy the graphic novels. And that this had been in development since summer of 2016 is when he first started doing this. Which, so if those who don't know, summer of 2016 is the infamous summer of when George said that he could finish The Winds of Winter. That's the infamous summer where he's like, oh yeah, no, I'm like 3 months away. I'm 3 or 4 months away. And they're like, okay. Little did we know he was actually pitching shows at the same time and not working on Winds. And here we are 7 years later from that point.
You see, I tweeted out that I got called a negative Nancy for this one tweet I put out about how, oh great, another another, what did I say? Oh, sweet! Not only are we getting another prequel, yay! But another reason for George to put off writing Winds of Winter. I got called a negative Nancy for that, and sure, but it's the truth.
It is the truth, but it depends how you see it. I mean, you could say it like, you could look at it like, well, Winds of Winter is already dead, so anything now is like net gain. Like anything is like once you accept that Winds of Winter is never coming, then like any product that comes forward is like a net gain, right? You still have hope. You still have hope.
Well, I know you want to be. I know you're the heir to Winterfell, and if something happens to George, you're the guy who takes over. But still, I do wonder though if something does happen to George and he doesn't finish Winds of Winter, will Elio and Linda step in and like release some things or?
Hard to say. I mean, having now like done it with with like the team of people, like the with everybody sending in ideas and having like writing and having writers submit stuff and then having editors and everything and putting it all together and see, like, it seems so impossible for any individual to do it other than a young George, and we don't have a young George. It seems so impossible. Like, even when I'm like, oh, I've got all these great ideas, I know the story, and then I get a submission. I'm like, oh, how did I forget that? Oh, fuck. Oh, this was really fucking well written. Oh my gosh, how did I? Like, I'm constantly in awe of like the strength of the crowdsource and how many good ideas come in. I'm like, oh man, that's really good. I just don't think, I don't know, and I'm trying to think even like with regards to Brandon Sanderson and Wheel of Time. Like, a lot of people admit, like, Wheel of Time, like, it was wrapped up really fast in a haphazard fashion in Brandon Sanderson's writing style, which is not Robert Jordan's writing style. But then they kind of admit, but it was wrapped up as well as it could. And they sort of like, I think the expectation bar was already pretty low because of something called the slog in the Wheel of Time series. Have I ever told you about that? Like,
no, I'll have to ask Amber about that. But what do you know about it?
Apparently, like, Robert Jordan, the first bunch of books for Wheel of Time are super strong, and then you get into this slog period where it's like 3 books where nothing happens, where he just kind of introduces new plot threads for no reason, and it's just like they're treading water and the plot's not moving forward. And then I think there might be one book after that that's okay, that people like, but like everybody is just like, what the hell? And so when Brandon Sanderson actually like moves the plot forward, and granted, it's like done, that Robert Jordan had put forward too many plot threads, and so the fact that like Brandon Sanderson wrapped up enough that he could, and then it made a somewhat cohesive story, and then it actually like brought it to a conclusion, was like, it was such a low bar that like people were very happy with what Brandon Sanderson had done. Because Robert Jordan had kind of already fucked up in the Wheel of Time series. I don't think people have that like idea with George. Like, there are people that are down on A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons. There are, but at the same time, like, they still sort of admit that it's incredible writing, and to have it all of a sudden be wrapped up quickly by another writer in another writing style would just be too much. I don't think it would work.
I understand what you're saying, but as of right now, you are, I call it Winterfell, but you are the heir to Winterfell in a sense, because you are currently writing Winds of Winter, and if anything happens, didn't he say if anything happened to him, he's burning his progress or whatever?
So it's books 7 through 10 are the slog, and these aren't small books. Like, like, can you imagine like just that much. I recently saw a video online from Brandon Sanderson that says like how to be disciplined and write 100,000 words a year. And I'm like, 100,000 words, like, even if you did that, like, to write the Winds of Winter would be like 4.5 years. Like that's disciplined. Like, so when people say like, George claiming that like he's 75% done, like that's still over 100,000 words to write in a year, and it's just, and probably, and to close the story up, it's really difficult. I just I just don't see it as happening. It's not without hope. It's, there's still some hope. Like I say, like Winds of Winter, I'd say, whether we'll get that eventually, we can put that at a 5 to 10% chance, with a Dream of Spring being a 0% chance,
Dream of Spring being 0%. There is one thing people keep
0%
overlooking.
chance with the Dream of Spring. 0% chance. Less than 0.
I have hope, but there is one thing people keep overlooking, and I hate saying this, but it's true. You ever notice how you don't see Jack Nicholson in any movies anymore? Like, ever?
Isn't he an old man? He's retired?
No. A couple years ago, there was a article I read where Jack was trying to read his lines for a thing, and he just kept forgetting them. He's having memory problems as he's getting older. This was like years ago. George is only 11 years younger than Jack Nicholson. The other problem you guys have to worry about is like maybe dementia, God forbid, Alzheimer's. God forbid.
Like my mother is the same age as George R. Martin. Okay, so it's like, it's not that I don't know exactly like, what happens to like people. Like it's just, I don't know. Just don't see it. Just don't see it all coming together. But I agree about compromise. Also, who do you think will be the presidential candidates versus who do you wish were the presidential candidates? I think the presidential candidates are going to be Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Like, I don't think Ron DeSantis has any shot now. Now that he signed that 6-week abortion ban, no way. He just signed himself not president. Like, I was fearful of that dude. But he's not making it now. Now that he has that albatross around his neck, no way. And so Trump has been smarter and has been going around going, maybe I think we went too far on the abortion thing. He's trying to find the right position, but it's yeah. But I think it's pretty. I think Joe Biden and Trump. I mean, Trump is just one of those characters that like can't lose the primary. So.
I love what the guy said right there. Your cursor is just on him. It's 2022. It's the sequel.
That's true. It's true.
Hopefully with less COVID this time. Hopefully.
No more boomers. They just don't go away. I know. What can you do? Dementia. It's funny. I was at a park a couple weeks ago, and I started talking to this old Taiwanese woman, and it's funny because just like people have different ideas about what's important in politics, and she was like an older conservative woman, but at the same time she's like, I don't understand why you guys like Biden in America. And I was like, well, I like Biden because I believe global warming is a real problem that needs to be dealt with, and I think women should be able to have abortions. And she hears that and she's like, well, okay, yeah, no, that's all reasonable, but he's so old. And I was like, okay, but he's got a team of people like around him, like, but those are the reasons I support him. And she's like, okay, I agree with those things, and then I was like, here in Taiwan, you guys like have different issues. Like the big issue for you guys voting was whether American pork should be imported. And all of a sudden, like her and like a whole group of people, they were like, but that's really important. They have these additives and stuff and da-da-da-da-da-da. And they started going off about like the pork issue, which was like the major issue in Taiwan was pork. Like whether they should allow American pork to be imported. Because American pork has a growth hormone thing that we give to pigs, and there's question about whether or not they wanted to have that in Taiwan and whether they wanted them to compete with Taiwanese pork farmers. And in the end, the Taiwanese actually voted to allow the American pork in. But it's like, to an American, that's like, it's such a silly small issue. Like, how is the biggest issue in your country pork? Like,
it seems like paradise to have like the biggest issues be like such a silly small issue instead of like, fascism and other bullshit like that going down. Like, that's such a great place. Wow.
Biden divorces Jill, marries Obama, instant election win. Oh, but he loves Jill too much. He loves Jill too much. How could he ever do that? That would be like, he would explode.
By the way, the super chat, like that super chat right there, I wanted to add something to that, but I'm actually curious about this question too.
If for some crazy reason you were given the opportunity to become the person to wrap up the story for A Dream of Spring using a team of authors, would you actually agree to take that burden? I would take that burden. I mean, I would do that. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I'm kind of doing it now, but the idea is like, would I like quit everything and make it my full-time job and like manage it? Like, yeah, because it's just such a unique. It would be such a unique opportunity. Like, like
you would quit your government job and just focus on doing this full time
on something like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Then who would destabilize Central American government? Stop it.
Exactly.
By the way,
absolutely. I mean, like that book would be then like rather famous and it would be quite a little legacy to have. Yeah. I think I would love to do something like that, but even if it were really difficult and hard, but you somehow work it out. But again, that's never going to happen. Okay, so but never going to happen. They don't pick some like rando YouTuber.
You never know. There was a podcast with Ryan Condal did a while ago. Someone sent it to me. One of the guests that Ryan Condal had, they said how 5 years ago they were just writing articles online about, Game of Thrones, and now here they are writing for House of the Dragon alongside Ryan Condal. Honestly, you never know. And I love you. I want you to know that before I say this, I love you. But to the audience, you don't want, or maybe you do, you don't want Preston to write all Dream of Spring because you know what he wants to happen. You don't know what I want to happen. You should want me to write it, because then you'll be completely blindsided when I kill Tyrion randomly at the
that'd be pretty funny.
At the Night Fort. Just he's making a speech and all of a sudden headshot by Sam.
It'd be so funny. He arrives and he's saying something super arrogant, and then like could you imagine like at some point they like capture Cersei and he goes there and he's like saying something super arrogant and she just pulls out a dagger and like stabs him and he's like, what? And then like and then that's the end of him. Like he's in the middle of like some quip and he just gets stabbed by Cersei.
I would have Sam shoot a crossbow right at Tyrion's face, and then as the chapter ends, Sam goes the phrase "send their regards." Why? You don't know. You don't. It's all in my head. You don't know. That's why you should want me to write Dream of Spring. It's the ultimate blindside book.
Hold on a second. So somebody, I'm going to answer the Social Security question. I just want to know. I'm just looking at one who is okay. This you got me baited here. Okay, guns should be banned. Are you insane? Are you fucking insane? Does 1930s Germany not ring a bell? As a gay person of color that's been raped, I carry daily, so it won't happen again. I don't understand. Like the 1930s thing. I assume you're talking about the gun propaganda that like somehow people went door to door taking the guns away from the Jews, and that therefore they weren't able to protect themselves for being brought off for the Holocaust. That thing, which is just like the most insane, stupid propaganda of this ridiculousness. Okay, that like, oh, had they had their guns, like, you know, they would have been able to fend off the fucking army. Like, no, like it's the dumb, like, bringing up 1930s Germany as like a reason for guns is just so dumb. It's so dumb. Like, that's just not how things happened. Okay, like to think that like the Jewish people could have avoided the Holocaust if they just had some guns, like against a fucking army and the entire government of many governments, or like not just the German government, but the rest of Eastern Europe's governments, like wanting to systematically kill them. That the only thing they needed was a few fucking guns to stop the Holocaust. It's just atrocious take. It's such an atrocious take that people throw out there for having the guns. So like, you're starting on this really bad premise, okay? All right, and then you're pulling in this, like, as a person of color that's been raped. I don't, like, look, dude, like, you're some bro on the internet. I have no idea, like, as a black man, I love Trump. I have no idea if that's fucking true or not. Could have made that shit up. Don't know, don't care. That's not an argument, okay? That's not an argument. So, like, if you really are a gay person of color who's been raped, by the way, I don't see how being gay and being a person of color has anything to do with anything. So the fact that you brought that up makes me think that you're full of shit, okay? Trying to, like, tug at, like, oh, Preston's a libtard. He's going to totally, like, eat up the gay person of color thing. Fuck you, okay? Don't try that bullshit. Now, if you're saying that violence has been put upon you, and therefore I need to have like the ability to inflict violence on others to protect me from violence that exists in the world, like, I've had gun pointed to my face. Like, what does that mean? Like, do you think that really rape would stop if everyone had a gun? Like, how? Like, how does that happen? Like, how? Like, you know, like people have guns all the time, and it just leads to more fights. Like, there was a woman that was just killed in a parking lot for shoplifting, and the guy approached her with a semi-automatic and shot her 8 times, and his excuse was, I had to shoot her because I feared she had a gun. Like how are these situations like ameliorated by an extra gun? So like, all of these fucking things, like everything about like your comment is just like ridiculous. The fact that you have this like really right-wing talking point in the middle, and you fucking call me a fucking moron and I'm insane. This right-wing talking point about 1930s Germany. And then you pull this as a black man, I love Trump bullshit, as a gay person of color who's been raped. Are like, what? Do you think I just eat it up? Oh, I'm a left-winger. You're a person of color? Oh, I'm going to take everything you say as gospel. Like, fuck off, dude. Like, what the fuck? Like, you came in here and called me a fucking moron and then tried to pull this, like, fake-ass bullshit. Fuck you. Banned.
Preston, you can't ban him. He's a person of color. Never mind.
Yeah. He's a white man who's claiming he's a person of color online. Like, how many people of color even call themselves people of color? They usually specifically say what they are. And like, him being gay and a person of color has nothing to do with the argument. Like, it's fucking stupid, dude. You think I'm going to eat that up? You think I'm going to fall for that bullshit? Do you think I'm naive? Like, how fucking dumb do you think left-wingers are? Got me worked up. I got baited. All right, do you think when it comes down to it that American people will stand up and fight for the protect the existence of Social Security? Oh, I will say that if there is anything that the American people will stand up for, it's the protection of Social Security. There is one universal thing that you will never touch in this country. It's Social Security. Now, there is a small issue with Social Security, and that is current law has that when the trust fund like ends, essentially, like we talked about this trust fund. There was a long time where Social Security was pulling in more money than it was paying out, and so they built up this trust fund. And now Social Security is paying out more money than it's taking in, and so it's going to pay out like until like 2038 or 2039. They keep changing the year every year because there's people that estimate these sorts of things. And so under current law, they can only pay out what they take in. And so we're talking about, it's about a 25% reduction in benefits at that point. And so I'm unsure if they're going to pass some law to start taking money from the general fund and continue the same levels, or if they'll let the 25% reduction in Social Security happen. I think it might be I think they might let it expire. It depends who's president, and it depends who's in charge of Congress and things like that. So we may see a 25% reduction in Social Security benefits, which would be pretty insane. I mean, because it happens all at once. Had they planned for this and they like reduced it a little bit or allowed it not to increase as much as it did per year, people wouldn't have noticed, because it was actually like Social Security benefits increased faster than inflation because they increased at wage rate. But so we'll see what happens. But Social Security will always exist. It's never going away. It's very, very popular. So, yeah. This is such obvious bait. Why would you even take it? Just because, like, I was just like, oh man. I know.
If you went to that guy's channel, it looks like a gun enthusiast channel. Actually, no, I'm wrong. It's not. Whatever. Just a couple of videos are.
Yeah.
Just him firing a mortar?
The fuck, yeah. Okay. I don't know about dying, but I'm fairly certain King Bran will have a tongueless Tyrion by the end. Okay, at the very, very end of the story, I could see Tyrion losing his tongue. But I could never see it happening like in the middle of the story, because then you're like, what would you do with like all the clever quips, you know? So I could see, like, if he loses his tongue in like the last battle and he's like the hand of the king, like tongueless, that would be pretty funny, you know? Oh my god, I'm staying quiet just for your entertainment.
Yeah, I look, you're on a roll. I'm not gonna ruin that. I'm not gonna ruin you on the roll. You rarely get fired up anymore. Like, you banned all the people that would like come in here and try to fuck with you.
I mean, I get weird stuff. I ban people for really weird reasons and really random reasons. Like if you post a comment that just is like very broad, like on our Trey podcast, like some random person posted a comment that was like these guys don't know anything about history, crying emoji. I'm just like, it's like so like empty and unlike, like I'm just like, that's just like the weirdest, like most abstract troll, like, and so it's like he's banned. Like, it's just like, why not?
Oh, you banned that?
Stuff like that. When there's like no specifics, I like hate like generalizations like that. When there's no specifics, I'm just like, well, you've brought nothing useful except for like, it's, I mean, at that point it's just name calling when you don't give any specifics, right? You know, like if I'm like, Carmine, your takes on Game of Thrones are horrible, and that's the only thing I give you, like you're like, which takes? What are you talking about? Like what specifically are you talking about? But instead it's just like something general and
you're saying you want more substance in the criticism rather than just an insult.
Yeah, and there's ways to be polite about criticisms as well. Like if you start out with something like you don't know what you're talking about, like then you're not in a good place. Like if you start out, like if you could go in and say like, I disagree. This is the reason I disagree, but I'm not, you know, if you you start out with some weird, really weird stuff.
No, I agree. That Trey video came out very nicely, though. I was really, really happy with that one.
Yeah, those were a really fun time. Let's see here. Dave and Dan Tyrion is so funny. Oh my god, I love his jokes with Varys. But Tyrion did kind of become like more quippy as time went on. So there is something like there is a little bit of D&D's like influence in the in like Tyrion, strangely enough. Let's see here. Huh. Preston, did you do anything on The Coach and the Computer by George R. R. Martin, 1967? That's super early. I have not read The Coach and the Computer. That would be super early writing. Like, is that something that he did for a like a zine? So before, like, the stuff that that I have, there is some like I've read nearly everything George has written except for like some of his like fanzine writing. Oh yeah, Dr. Weird, like the comics version. Yeah, it is one of his zine stories. I've never read the Coach and the Computer, so I'm not sure. That's like super rare if it can even be found. But yeah, so sorry. That's one of those ones that like is really early and I have not seen. Let's see here. So, Teenage Martin. It is. I think it is. I think it is Teenage Martin. 1967. He's 19 years old at that point. Yeah, 19. Let's see here. Is it true that mainland China is in debt crisis far worse than the average U.S. citizen experienced in the U.S.? 200 years of debt in 40 years. I will say this, that Chinese people, culturally speaking, are not ones that like to take on debt. And it took a long time for credit cards to even catch on in China, because the concept of taking out debt to pay for something, like usually their idea is you collect money and then you buy something, versus like, I buy something on credit and then pay it back later. So if we're talking about like personal debt or something, that would be news to me. I do know there are some Chinese people that, gambling is big in China, and there are a lot of Chinese people that do like to put money in the stock market. So, maybe there could be some people that lost money that way. But what I will say about that, I just don't see the average Chinese person owning much or having much debt. Like, I think the average person would just be at zero and unable to get a credit card. Like, this is unlike America, where credit companies like give credit cards to the average poor person, and then they get debt, or they go in and they get a medical bill and then they have massive debt. Medical is free in China, and credit cards are not popular among the average person. So I would doubt that for the average citizen. Now, the question about the country itself, I think China has a big surplus of U.S. Treasury bills and things like that. So I don't think there's a debt crisis in China. Nothing. I mean, there's a lot of like beliefs about China not being as powerful as it really is, and it having a lot of like shaky economic situations. But I don't know if personal debt would be necessarily one of them. In overanalyzing House of the Dragon Part 8, you mistook the official court mourning that the narrative referred to for the emotional state. Have you ever considered going back and fixing and correcting that video? See, even in those situations where he starts talking about like official court mourning versus like personal mourning, they keep these things abstract enough that you're not really sure what's going on. And this is fairly common. So I'd have to go back and be like, is that a significant mistake? Does it really change the story that much? Like, I make mistakes in videos all the time. It's, whether the mistake is like large enough that I feel like I need to go back and like re-release it. I've actually never re-released a video, except for the Guide to the Thousand Worlds. So, I mean, it's like when we hear about like champion, like what is the person the sworn sword or is the champion? What do they mean by that? It's the same when they say like mourning. Were they talking about the official court mourning? Or were they talking about something else? I'm sure it's ambiguous in the line. Let me bring it up real quick. See, the line was actually, once his mourning for his wife and son had run its course, the king moved swiftly to resolve the long simmering issue of succession. Is it that line? Like, so I mean that's a pretty ambiguous line, because that seems like when you're really talking about running its course. Things like that. Anyway, we'll see. Okay. The one thing I feel the show did well that I disliked in the books is how Jaime never visits Tyrion until he releases him. Best ad. It is really, really weird that Jaime doesn't go visit Tyrion in prison and just kind of like watches the trial from the back. You know what I'm talking about, Carmine, on this?
We discussed it briefly before, but yeah, you always found it so weird that like in the show they did it better in the sense where Tyrion and Jaime are always having a good time. They had that infamous crunch about their cousin who fell on his head.
Yeah. I mean, not that necessarily the crunch cousin thing like is a great line, but it does make a lot more sense that Jaime would go see Tyrion when he returns. And I think it was probably just like George didn't know what to do with Jaime being in town. Like he arrives in town and there's this trial for his brother going on. And it's like, he doesn't go talk to his dad. He doesn't go talk to Tyrion. He doesn't like discuss like, oh my gosh, you're going to send your son to the wall. Like, how could this happen? Like, he doesn't really like mourn Joffrey. He's not like present. It's just like a lot of weird. He just kind of mentions is that he was in the back of the trial and Tyrion didn't even see him, and that was kind of it. And then so that they could have the sudden reveal of him like meeting him during the escape and being involved in the escape. I mean, I understand like why George did it. I think it was a very difficult thing to write. And so he like waited for that moment, but I guess it does make more sense in the show that Jaime would go see Tyrion and like visit him in jail at that point. At best ad though is Baelor. I'm not sure what best ad though is Baelor. Oh, best ad though is Baelor. Is Baelor? Was that the name? What was the name? I'm trying to think what the ad is. What the Baelor ad is.
Is he talking about where Ned yells Baelor in the crowd?
Does Ned add that? What, Ned yells Baelor at some point?
Yeah, in the show at least.
Oh, really? Why?
Because that's where Arya is hiding behind the statue.
Oh. Okay.
And he's trying to get Yoren's attention, like to let Yoren know that's where she is.
To let Yoren know that. So he like spends his last moments like trying to protect his daughter from that. Okay, no, that is a good ad. Okay, I admit. Okay, that's all right.
Early seasons, Dave and Dan did not fuck around. Like we're currently doing we were doing commentary for season 1 of Game of Thrones, and we've gone over this ad nauseum during those. Dave and Dan really improved upon the material when they added like a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. I'm like looking up the time code to make sure I'm at the right fucking place because I know I'm like 1718. Am I talking about the same thing? Okay. That time code does that time code even bring me to the right place here? Daemon was commander of the watch for the whole city. It doesn't make any sense unless you're a snooty outsider who believes that the whole derogatory name using Flea Bottom when Daemon was commander of the watch for the whole city. It doesn't make... I don't know, that time code doesn't even like bring me to anything. I'm not sure what that's about. All right, have to move on. Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan are the worst leaders we've ever had. Yes, even recently. Because of the war on drugs. I mean, the war. I don't know. I think drugs would probably still be screwed up if even without the war on drugs and the prison system and things like that. So I don't know. I still think you can't really defeat, like you can't, like W and Trump are pretty atrocious, just in the sense that like our judiciary is now screwed forever, and that like democracy has been undermined, and things like that. So I mean, all these things are right. USA has 5% of the world's population, 25% of the prisoners in the world. I can't disagree with all of these horrible problems. Drug wars have consequences. Yes, that's all true. It's all true. What's better, a good fart or a good burp? A good fart? What are you talking about? A good fart, of course. Preston, I saw a video of yours and thought you were wrong about a timeline. It seems you could have misunderstood the timeline. Could email be the place to address it? I mean, you could try to send me an email, but I don't know which specific thing it is. There's a lot of places I'm wrong in the world, and a lot of places I'm right. What's funny is I get a lot of stuff where people are like, "You're wrong about something. You're a moron," and then it's like, and then a lot of times it's like something that I'm not wrong on. That happens a lot too. So it's hard for me to address like everything that people put forward. Yes, I'm wrong on shit. I mess up shit all the time. The man, Dare. We're talking about Dare. The Supreme Court isn't screwed over forever, just within our lifetimes. I mean, it's fixable if we never elect a Republican ever again. Like, the problem is that like every time the Republicans like get in power, they put in like a 12-year-old justice, and then they're in there forever. Fire and Blood stuff in the year of 114. That's when Daemon comes back and does the sex adventure stuff. 114. After discovering Preston is a fart enthusiast, I wonder which Shrek movie is his favorite. I mean, I'm talking about like personal experience of one versus like seeing one in a movie. I think you all know I've been baited here because everybody knows my criticism of Return of the Jedi is that it has like way too many fart and burp jokes, and that it has like ruined the movie was ruined for so many reasons. But you know, what can you do? But you claim that the statement is weird because there's a proper amount of mourning. Oh, right. That rings a bell somewhat. Let's see here. Because it's again one of these situations for what is because he says something like when the proper amount of mourning had passed or something. Let's see here. Proper. Oh well. It's is it? I'm trying to find this. I mean, they're like, you know, George is really weird with these, with like crossing over of like what is like the court thing versus like what we're gonna see as readers and what like one experiences on a personal level. Like he purposely like conflates these things. Anyway, Star Wars 7 and 9 is like Rings of Power, unfortunate missed opportunities. I would say that as well about Star Wars 6, 1, 2, and 3. All of them are missed opportunities. Wow.
2 and 3 aren't that bad.
You're talking about Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith?
Yeah, they're not that bad. 7, 8, and 9 are definitely missed opportunities. Like 110%.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Hey Preston, can you explain to me how many eyes Euron has? His smiling eye, his blood eye, his crow's eye, etc. Is it never explained? I think the implication is that they're all the same eye. It's all the eye underneath his patch. But you make an interesting point about maybe there's like 1,000 different euphemisms for the same eye. So who has 1,000 eyes in one? So who knows? All right, guys. I've been on 3 hours, but thank you all for staying with me. Carmine, is there anything else that you want to talk about before we go?
No, I'm gonna put out the podcast we did on my channel about Dunk and Egg and how people keep saying. I will say I'm glad we're not getting like this flurry of Ice and Fire spinoffs. But Dunk and Egg, I'm glad we got that one in there because that was the one we did want. In fact, I
Yeah,
went back
yeah.
and watched a 2020 video we did, and yeah, we were hoping for Dance of the Dragons and Dunk and Egg, and we're getting those. Where we got one, getting the other one.
Yeah. No, I mean like it's great. It's great source material. It's great that it's being put to screen. Like obviously there's costs, but like it's good. It's good that
We were worried for a second that HBO was in like a weird position because they kept canceling stuff left and right, and we were worried that like maybe we're not getting another prequel. But going forward, Ice and Fire spinoffs, Harry Potter, whenever they do that, and usually like Euphoria or something else takes the third slot. Those are the shows that are going to keep the lights on HBO because a lot of the other shows kind of just go away after they're done.
So DD thinks this is more about phases, that they're doing like Marvel like planning, and that
Wait, DD, who are you talking about?
Dragon Demands.
Oh, he stayed up? Whoa, what are you doing awake?
Or maybe he's back in, or he just arrived. But that that HBO Discovery, whatever they are, like has a plan, and they have a phase. They've done a Marvel phase, Disney phase system, where which I don't know. I mean, I still think that because they're so shaky financially, that they're being a little conservative on stuff. Because like I say, like I understand that Dragon Demands believes that the season 2 to season 3 thing was more of an expansion than a contraction. I'm still under the opinion that it's a contraction, that they have monetary problems, that they're cutting a season from 10 to 8, and that they're when you go forward on with Dunk and Egg, it's low cost, no dragons, no CGI, that these are still kind of conservative actions. These are still conservative things for big payoffs. That there's no like balls to the wall like spending, like we saw with, say, like Game of Thrones seasons 6, 7, and 8, where they're just throwing money. And so we'll see. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if one of the animated things goes forward now, because the animated things are so cheap. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, compared to an episode of House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones, I had a picture here someone sent me about that. I think one episode of, I'm trying to find it here. One episode of House of the Dragon was actually very, very expensive, way more so than an episode of season 2 of Game of Thrones. I'm trying to find it.
What's your favorite Shrek movie? I don't really like Shrek. I don't really like Mike Myers anymore. But I think I laughed at Pinocchio dropping down in the Mission Impossible thing once. But
he's a little too older for.
Was that Shrek
Shrek
2? Was that Shrek 2?
I like Shrek 1. I love Shrek 1. That was the best.
Well, I'll tell you my problem with Shrek. And it has to do with, there was this formula that they've largely gone away from, thankfully. But it was like, let's do an animated movie, and we'll have like, it even went beyond it. But it was like, we'll do an animated movie, and then we'll have this like loud, anachronistic side character who's going to be like super annoying. So like, an Iago from Aladdin, or the genie, dragon, it's just this like nuts bonkers anachronistic character. And so like, I just didn't like Eddie Murphy's donkey character. I don't really like Mike Myers and his Scottish accent thing. I don't understand the appeal of it. Like, I don't know. Like, there are some okay jokes here and there, but it's hard for me to get past those things, But Though I think I did laugh at the Pinocchio thing. So
You didn't like the Muffin Man thing? The Muffin Man, the Muffin Man.
I
You
did
didn't like that?
I did laugh at that actually. Yeah, I did laugh at that. Yeah, and I think Puss in Boots is actually a pretty good character. I can't deny that. But I don't know. Like Shrek is such an unlikable character. Why should I root for him? And Donkey is such an unlikable character. So I don't know. It was just I think Mulan. Mulan had because wasn't Eddie Murphy also a loud, annoying side character in Mulan?
Yeah, you're kind of right about that. Some of the Sylvester Stallone films I like always had like an annoying like quippy side character that was just there for comic
like
relief.
the Judge Dredd having
I was
like
just
Rob
thinking
Schneider,
Dredd,
yeah, Rob Schneider, right?
And then he comes back again as the sidekick again
Mm-hmm.
to Sylvester Stallone in Demolition Man.
Yeah, you're right. Though he's kind of like more of a bit character, right? I think there's something else around that period of time that I didn't like. I didn't like Will Smith's character in Men in Black. I thought it was a really lazy character because he just you put a funny monster on screen and then you have Will Smith go in and go, "Ah, you're a funny looking monster," and that's like the formula for the whole movie. Like, oh my gosh, this is a funny thing happening, and like I'm not a fan of fourth wall breaking just commentary, like for the sake of commentary. And so I don't like being inside a rowdy movie theater in a movie. So I guess I like that was the thing that kind of like I never really liked about. I don't like Robin Williams like Genie in Aladdin. Like I understand that like that's like sacrilege, but like I don't like Robin Williams Genie in Aladdin. Like I just don't. That's just not my kind of humor.
You are crazy.
I know. It's just not my. It's not my kind of humor. Like when I want to see a movie about, like getting lost in the Middle East in some fantastical adventure, I want to get lost in a fantastical adventure in the Middle East. Like I don't want a genie acting like Jack Nicholson in the middle of my adventure. Like I don't know what it is. So I understand this is sacrilege. People are going to hate this. Like, what? You don't want that? It's like, sorry, it's just, I know. Dweezy is
wait,
like
hold on. I have to call
himself.
you out now. I have to call you out now because you don't like the fourth wall breaking, right?
This is very different from like meta humor, because I understand meta humor for the sake of meta humor. Like I understand like
because I was going to mention She-Hulk, and you like She-Hulk.
Yeah, and I love Community. Like I get meta humor when the theme of your show is meta humor. That's one thing. When your story is fantastical adventure of Aladdin in the Middle East, and then you're throwing in a fourth wall breaking like aspect to it, then I think it's a little weird, because that's not what I signed up for, I want a fantastical adventure. I want a fantastical Arabian adventure. That's what I want. Magic carpets and genies and stuff. Like I don't want Jack Nicholson in the middle of my story. But I understand.
Jackie goes, so did you just hate your whole childhood?
Well, that's the other thing, is I'm actually too old for Aladdin. Okay, so Aladdin's coming out when I'm... when did Aladdin come out? Yeah, Aladdin's like... I'm a teenager by the time Aladdin comes out, so...
Yeah, your jam was like G.I. Joe and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the original.
Yeah, absolutely. Star Wars, He-Man, Ninja Turtles, Voltron. The kids' movies were like The Never-Ending Story, the Dark Crystal, the Secret of Nim.
Back when like kids' movies weren't really kids' movies, they were secretly like adult films. Kinda.
Yeah, because there were no kids' movies. Yeah, so. And then everything changed where they're like, oh, let's just, let's make these pop culture references like constantly. I mean, I suppose it's not like Sesame Street wasn't making those jokes constantly when it was running, but like Muppet humor was Muppet humor, so I don't know. So Goonies was your movie. I will grant that like Goonies is a funny movie because I recognize that Goonies on the one hand, plot wise, is a train wreck. It is the dumbest plot, like, and that makes no sense whatsoever. However, there is no movie that better captures what it's like to be a dirt bike riding boy riding around the neighborhood looking for adventure than Goonies. Like there's no movie that like captures that piece of Americana and like how little boys are and act to each other and what they would do. And like, so, keep in mind, like I am a dirt bike riding little boy riding around the neighborhood, like looking for adventure, and like Goonies comes out. Oh fuck. Oh my God. Do I, Never Ending Story is a terrible movie. Probably is, like in retrospect, like I'm not denying that it's probably a terrible movie, but like when you're a kid and you watch it, it's just like the end. But oh my God, I want to tell you, should I share? I've got a really fucking like banger story. Carmine, should I save it for another time, or should I tell you like
what's it in regards to?
It's a story about me being a child, having adventures, with a treasure map,
Oh, you know what? This would be a great story for Patreon exclusive. Guys, thank you so much for joining. I'm kidding. You should save it for like the next podcast. Someone in my Discord server, if you guys are listening, please remind me to remind him. But if I were you,
the treasure map story.
Yeah.
The Preston treasure map story. You like
1 p.m. Look,
it's a fucking crazy story, and you're not gonna believe it. Like this happened to me, but it says so much about like America and like oh my God, it's such a good. Next time, you all have to remind me of the treasure map story. Okay, do not let me forget.
Please.
Yeah, the Preston and the treasure map story is something I need to tell. But it kind of relates to Goonies because anyway, next time we'll discuss. But all right, I will talk to you guys later. Thanks for all being here. Okay. All right. Bye.